Chapter 189. Mu Xinya said indifferently, in addition to the 2 mutated corpse kings from before and the newly discovered corpse king, there are 3 corpse kings. Each corpse king has the strength of a martial monarch. We should be able to succeed. According to the agreement, you have to increase my remuneration by half. I have lived here for 10 years, living a life that is neither human nor ghost. I have had enough. Supervisor Li revealed an expression of resentment as he spoke. Mu Xinya frowned slightly. My race has prepared this plan for over 100 years. What is your 10 years' worth of effort? At the last moment, you are going back on your word. You are too untrustworthy. Supervisor Li chuckled. Whatever you say, I will definitely eat you up. At most, we will just break up. A cold killing intent flashed in Mu Xinya's eyes. Her aura suddenly soared, as though she was going to make a move at any moment. Supervisor Li smiled faintly and welcomed her without fear. Finally, Mu Xinya compromised. She snorted coldly, as you wish. I will increase your medial-grade spirit stones to 3,000. In another tunnel, Xiaoqin felt uneasy as he practiced his saber randomly. The night pearls lit up the tunnel like it was daytime. A strong wind blew and saber lights flickered. Occasionally, there would be explosive shouts coming from the air. Xiaoqin casually practiced a set of saber techniques. When his aura reached its peak, he shouted and swung the lunar shadow saber. The saber blade gave off a glow as it stabbed into the stone wall. Shwa! Shwa! Black rocks fell off the wall continuously. The entire blade of the lunar shadow saber, including the hilt, was completely embedded into the wall. It was clear how angry he was. He had gone through a lot of trouble to obtain this information. He had not thought of receiving any rewards, he only hoped that the other party would take note of it. Who knew that Yuan would accuse him of snitching? This made him very depressed. Xiaoqin took a few deep breaths before he slowly calmed down. It looks like there is no hope for Supervisor Zhao. I do not know how to face him tomorrow. Never mind, things will eventually sort themselves out, Xiaoqin sighed to himself. I just have to guarantee that nothing big will happen before the end of the month. He's just a little girl and an ordinary minor. If I'm careful, I don't believe that he can cause any big waves. The next day, early in the morning, Xiaoqin acted as usual, acting as though nothing had happened. He went out to patrol with Ma Cheng and Mu Xinya. The morning passed just like that. It was so peaceful that there were no waves, which made people feel uncomfortable. Not to mention the dried corpses, even the spirit-swallowing worms that could be seen occasionally had disappeared without a trace. The mine was eerily quiet. Just when Xiaoqin thought he was imagining things, Ma Cheng suddenly said, "What's going on today? I feel like something is wrong." Xiaoqin looked at him and said in surprise, "Do you have this feeling too?" I thought I was the only one who felt that way. Ma Cheng had completed many missions in this tunnel. His intuition should be trustworthy. Xiaoqin couldn't help but feel nervous. During the patrol in the afternoon, Xiaoqin paid 120% of his attention. Aside from paying attention to his surroundings, he also placed most of his attention on Mu Xinya. If there were any accidents, it would definitely be related to Mu Xinya. When the time came, he just had to keep an eye on her. If anything happened, he would be able to salvage the situation. Xiaoqin came to a fork that he passed frequently. He ignored the 2 dead ends and headed for the left tunnel with the miner's lamp. "Little Lord Yi, is that you?" Xiaoqin had not gone far when he heard a weak voice coming from the dead-end tunnel behind him. He quickly stopped and looked towards one of the tunnels. He sent out his spiritual sense and saw the appearance of the person who spoke. Xiaoqin was startled, it was the supervisor who had been missing for close to half a month. "Who is inside?" Ma Cheng asked cautiously. Xiaoqin replied, "It is the supervisor Wang that I mentioned to you previously. He has been missing for half a month already. I did not expect him to suddenly appear here." "Little Lord Yi, is that you?" That weak voice drifted over once again. It sounded like it was squeezed out from between clenched teeth. It caused one's scalp to go numb and felt very uncomfortable. Ma Cheng had already drawn his saber. His entire body was tense and he was on high alert. He said to Xiao Chen, "Junior brother Yi, do you want to go over and take a look?" Xiao Chen muttered to himself for a while, pretending to be thinking. In reality, he was using his spiritual sense to observe the supervisor. He discovered that aside from the fact that the supervisor's life force was very weak, there was nothing wrong with him. Even so, this person had been missing for close to half a month. Now that he suddenly appeared, it was hard to avoid feeling suspicious. He did not dare to be careless. "Let's go over and take a look." "Just stay alert." Xiaochen placed his right hand on the hilt of the lunar shadow saber and led Ma Qing towards the dead-end tunnel. When they got close, they discovered that Supervisor Wang was lying on the ground. He was leaning weakly against the wall, groaning weakly. Seeing such a situation, Xiaochen relaxed his guard. Xiaochen took out a bottle of water and handed it to this person. Supervisor Wang revealed an expression of joy as he stretched his hand out to receive the bottle. "Hu Qi. Keng Chang." However, Supervisor Wang had only extended his hand halfway. Before Xiaochen felt anything was wrong, Ma Cheng, who was beside him, hacked down with his saber. This saber tore through the air. It was very fast, there was no way to dodge. When the sharp blade struck Supervisor Wang's hand, something strange happened. Supervisor Wang's hand was not chopped off. Instead, it emitted a clanging sound that sounded like metal colliding with metal. Xiao Chen's expression changed and he quickly retreated far away. Supervisor Wang bounced up from the ground and quickly stood up. He completely tore off his disguise and a rotten smell came from his body. His clothes were torn apart, revealing the hard black skin underneath. "How did you discover that something was wrong?" Xiao Chen asked as he stood together with Ma Cheng. Ma Cheng quickly replied, his 5 fingers were completely black, they had lost the luster of a human. "So that's how it is." Xiao Chen looked at Supervisor Wang in astonishment. He did not expect that after not seeing him for half a month, Supervisor Wang had actually turned into a dried corpse. G.A. 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 A strange laughter came from Supervisor Wang's mouth. He said clearly, "I originally wanted to give you a surprise. Who knew that you would discover it in advance?" Ma Cheng's complexion was somewhat pale as he said in a soft voice, "Something is wrong. Why does he still have his own thoughts? After he was infected with the corpse poison, he should have turned into a walking corpse." Xiao Chen frowned, he could not guess what was going on. It was not like it had never happened before for a living person to turn into a dried corpse. When an ordinary person was infected with the corpse poison, they would turn into a dried corpse. However, those were just walking corpses, they did not have much combat prowess. Even an ordinary person could easily dodge them. Supervisor Wang laughed strangely again. "Do you think I am someone that those walking corpses can compare to? I am the corpse monarch, someone who uses corpses to prove my Tao. I am the monarch of the ancient corpses." "Who?" Supervisor Wang waved his hands in the air and a golden cloak appeared from nowhere. Then, he tied it around his body. Then, he took out a golden crown and wore it on his head. For a corpse that was as thin as firewood to be wearing such a set of clothing, it was incomparably strange. "Who cares what you are? I will chop you to death with one strike." Mountain-splitting chop. Ma Cheng snorted coldly and leaped into the air. His figure flashed into the air, he had already practiced this mountain-splitting chop to great perfection. An indistinct image of a lonely mountain appeared above his head. It seemed like it had the force of 10,000 kilograms as it descended with a majestic aura. Supervisor Wang, or rather, the corpse sovereign. The corpse sovereign laughed coldly and pointed at the ground. The ground exploded with a bang, and a mummy burst out from the ground, leaping towards Ma Cheng. Chop! When Ma Cheng saw the corpse bearing its fangs and claws in the air, a look of disdain flashed in his eyes. Ma Cheng shouted and swung his saber, infused with the force of 10,000 kilograms, at the corpse. Suddenly, Xiaochen felt that something was wrong. His gaze was like lightning as he looked at the corpse in the air. A purple light flashed in his eyes and he saw the situation of the corpse clearly. Countless streams of black light flowed through the meridians of the corpse's body. In the dantian, there was a black spiral of qi that spun like a gale. Xiaochen was astonished. This corpse was clearly a ticking time bomb. The flowing black qi was the fuse. As long as it was broken, it would explode immediately. Furthermore, the might of this attack was not small. If Ma Cheng was caught off guard, he would definitely suffer. Blue Dragon Tail Whip. Xiaochen shouted, and a boundless amount of essence flowed to his right foot. His right foot pushed off the ground, and the ground started to tremble slightly. Suddenly, a blue dragon image wrapped around Xiaochen's body. It was as though he had turned into a dragon. The dragon tail whipped in the air, creating an intense ripple and space started to tremble. In the next instant, Xiaochen's figure moved in an arc in the air. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Ma Cheng. The three flowing cloud images made the first move. The scabbard of the saber struck the corpse's body gently, creating an intense wave on the surface of the sea. The corpse was thrown towards the corpse monarch on the ground. This was the first time Xiaochen used the high-level technique of the blue dragon cloud soaring art. This was the true might of a heaven-ranked movement technique. After he used it, his speed instantly reached its peak. Not only did Ma Cheng not react, but the corpse monarch on the ground also did not react. Only when the corpse flew into the air did the corpse monarch on the ground react. A strange smile appeared on his skinny face as he flicked his finger. Boom! The corpse directly exploded in the air with a loud bang. It immediately shattered into pieces. The corpse turned into a black qi flow and spread out in all directions. When the energy condensed from Ma Cheng's mountain-splitting chop met with this qi flow, it was actually evenly matched. Ma Cheng somersaulted backwards and landed firmly on the ground. Traceless flowing water. Xiaochen was in the air. He had a relaxed expression as he executed the three flowing cloud images. The scabbard of the saber streaked across in front of him. It carried a gentle energy like flowing water, sweeping away the black qi flow without a trace. When the black qi flow scattered, Xiaochen and Ma Cheng stood together. They looked at the corpse monarch in front of them cautiously. Although it called itself a monarch, it did not have the strength of a martial monarch. It was equivalent to a human martial king. Even so, a martial king was not something the two of them could deal with. Furthermore, this corpse monster was extremely strange. It was much stronger than a regular martial king. Chapter 190. Since you are able to receive one move from me and not die, I will let you off. Ga. 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 The corpse monarch laughed strangely. He waved his right hand and corpses poured out of the ground. When one looked carefully, these corpses were the missing miners. Someone had used a special method to refine these corpses. They were much stronger than regular corpses. The corpse monarch laughed strangely. Take your time, I still have things to do. Ga. 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 The corpse monarch's body slowly merged into the ground and soon disappeared without a trace. However, the ground was still as flat as before. There were no cracks at all. Earth evasion technique? Seeing the method the corpse monarch used to escape, Xiaochen immediately thought of the earth evasion technique recorded in the Compendium of Cultivation. The scene in front of him was exactly the same as the earth evasion technique. However, there was no time for him to think about it. The surrounding corpses were already rushing over. The narrow tunnel was filled with hundreds of corpses. Pooh! 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 Xiaochen brandished the scabbard in his hand, making it airtight. His figure turned into flowing water, blocking all the corpses rushing at him. Occasionally, he would even help Ma Chen. Suddenly, Xiaochen thought of something. He turned to Ma Chen and asked, "Senior brother Ma, did you see junior sister Mu?" Ma Chen was stunned. Then, He asked in a strange tone. That's right, where did junior sister Mu go? When did she leave? Damn it, Xiaoqin cursed in his heart. After guarding her for so long, in the end, she still managed to leave this place silently. Mu Xinya must have taken the opportunity to leave when the two of them were distracted by Supervisor Wang. Ma Qing kicked one of the dried corpses away and dodged the attack of the other dried corpse. Then, he slashed his saber at the other dried corpse's body, creating a clanging sound. It sounded like metal clashing against metal. The dried corpse was pushed back but was unable to be split into two. Junior brother Yi, what should we do? These corpses seem to be invulnerable. Furthermore, there are too many of them. I'm afraid we cannot think of a solution. The situation is not good. Ma Qin said anxiously. Xiaoqin muttered to himself in silence, carefully thinking of countermeasures. The speed and strength of these corpses were only that of an ordinary human martial grand master. If that was all, with Ma Cheng's cultivation, he would be able to easily kill his way out. In addition, Xiaoqin would definitely be able to wipe out this group of corpses. However, the most troublesome thing was that the skin of these dried corpses was as tough as steel. When the blade struck them, it could only leave a shallow mark. What was even more troublesome was that these dried corpses did not feel any pain at all. If you can't repel him, he will ignore the wounds on his body and continue to attack you. It's very troublesome. Xiaoqin could easily leave by himself. However, he did not want to expose too many of his trump cards in front of Ma Cheng. After all, he had not interacted much with Ma Cheng. It was better to be on guard. Let's rush out, senior brother Ma. Don't hide anymore. Xiaoqin said calmly. He did not believe that Ma Cheng, who had completed so many missions in the tunnels and escaped unscathed, did not have any trump cards. There was only one reason why Ma Cheng did not want to use his trump cards. He wanted to preserve his strength and force Xiaoqin to make a move. Ma Cheng revealed an embarrassed expression. He smiled bitterly and said, I am really not hiding anything. It is just that I am not confident. I will need senior brother Yi to help me later. Otherwise, all my efforts will be wasted. Bang! 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 Xiaoqin held his saber in his left hand and punched 3 times with his right hand. He easily knocked back 3 corpses that pounced at him. His body had been tempered by the 7-leaf flower and cultivated bitterly. Even if he did not use his essence and just relied on the strength of his physical body, he would have more than 1,000 kilograms of force. When these corpses were struck by his punch, a slight crack appeared on their bronze-like skin. When they were knocked back, they knocked the corpses behind them to the ground. When Ma Cheng, who was at the side, saw this scene, he was astonished. He could not tell that an inferior-grade martial grand master like Xiaoqin actually had such strength. I wonder if senior brother Ma has any good moves to break out of this encirclement. If you need me to make a move, I will not hesitate to do so, Xiaoqin said. Ma Cheng split apart 2 corpses and said, I have a large area of effect martial technique. I think I can open a path. However, it takes a long time to activate. I will need junior brother Yi to protect me. That is not a problem, Xiaoqin said. Xiaoqin executed the blue dragon cloud soaring art. It was like a blue dragon was swimming around Ma Cheng. He used the scabbard in his hand like a wooden stick. When the corpses that pounced over were struck by Xiaoqin, they would immediately fly back. With Xiaoqin's protection, no corpses could come within 10 meters of Ma Cheng. Ma Cheng took a deep breath and a light flashed in his eyes. Suddenly, he took 2 steps forward and shouted. The surrounding spiritual energy flowed into his saber like flowing water. Flowing water breaking peak. There was the sound of gushing water in the tunnel. An otherworldly river gathered on Ma Cheng's saber. Ma Cheng's right wrist, which was holding the saber, trembled slightly. A visible wave spread out in all directions. The mountain-splitting saber technique was a very common saber technique in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. However, there were very few people who could practice the 9th move, flowing water breaking peak. This Ma Cheng was indeed outstanding. Rumble. The corpses that were flying over from all directions were immediately blasted away. The river water swept away all the corpses that were in front of it as if they were dried twigs. It's not over yet. Condense. The saber in Ma Cheng's hands suddenly spun and the scattered river water gathered back together. In an instant, it shot out. All the corpses in a straight line were pierced through their chests. In the next instant, they fell apart and shattered into pieces. They could not be more dead than this. Flowing water breaking peak, so that's how it is. The flowing water is just the prelude. The final breaking peak is the true killing move, Xiaochen thought to himself. The two of them took advantage of this opportunity and leaped out of the encirclement of the corpses. The space around them widened. The two of them executed their movement techniques and quickly shook off the corpses behind them. Let's go, let's quickly inform Marshal Uncle Yi. Xiao Chen and Xiao Chen ran towards the headquarters of the 8th layer of the tunnel. However, before they got far, they discovered something inconceivable. All the miners they met along the way had turned into corpses. This made it difficult for the two of them to move forward. Every step forward was incomparably difficult. Fortunately, these corpses did not have as strong a physical body as the corpses from earlier. With the strength of the two of them, they could easily chop these corpses into pieces. Another corpse charged at Xiao Chen without any regard for its life. Xiao Chen punched at its face. The wind from the punch caused the corpse's hair to flutter, revealing a pale face. Xiao Chen's expression changed and he could not help but stop. How could it be him? This corpse was actually the supervisor who pleaded with Xiao Chen last night. In just one night, his premonition had come true. Including him, all the miners who had reached the end of their 5-year term at the end of the month had turned into corpses. Shua! In the instant that Xiao Chen was stunned, a saber light flew over and chopped the corpse in half. Ma Chen said anxiously, "What are you thinking about? Be careful not to get poisoned by the corpse poison. Otherwise, you will turn into a corpse as well." Who? Xiao Chen sent out 2 palm winds and blew the black liquid from the corpse to the side. Xiao Chen's expression did not change, but his heart felt like it had been stabbed by something. It was incomparably painful. "Let's go, stop staring blankly," Ma Chen quickly called out when he saw Xiao Chen standing there without moving. Xiao Chen grunted and did his best to calm his heart. He braced himself and followed behind Ma Chen, rushing quickly to the headquarters. All the 2,000 miners in the tunnel had turned into corpses. The two of them did not hesitate to make a move, they rushed forward as though they were breaking dry weeds. Normally, it would only take 10 minutes. However, this time, it took them more than an hour to reach the headquarters. However, something unexpected happened. The 10-odd martial saints who usually guarded the headquarters had all disappeared. The place was empty, not a single person could be seen. Piles upon piles of inferior-grade spirit stones filled the huge stone room. They shone brightly, almost blinding everyone's eyes. There was an indistinct barrier of light in front of the stone room. The two of them knew that this was a special barrier. Without proof, they would not be able to enter. Hence, they could only look at so many spirit stones. The two of them had not expected such an outcome after spending so much effort to rush over. After discussing for a while, they decided to find a place to rest first. They definitely could not go back, the place was already filled with corpses. The two of them were already tired of killing these corpses, they did not want to make another move. They took out the map and chose a rather desolate dead end. They were prepared to rest there before doing anything else. After rushing to the place indicated on the map, the two of them traveled a long distance before they relaxed. Ma Chen sat down on the ground and panted, "I have been here for so long, but this is the first time I encountered such a thing. This time, we might have really reached the end of the road." Xiao Chen's emotions had already slowly calmed down. He asked, "Senior brother Ma, you are very knowledgeable. Turning so many people into dried corpses is such a deranged action. Is there any way to do such a thing?" Ma Chen thought for a while before saying, aside from the already extinct running corpse sect in the Tianwu continent, I cannot think of any other reason. However, this running corpse sect has already disappeared for close to 1,000 years. The running corpse sect was an extremely evil sect. It rose up before the Tianwu dynasty. That was the most chaotic period of the human race and also the most glorious period of the running corpse sect. The running corpse sect was split into two factions. One faction focused on driving and controlling corpses. If they could obtain a strong corpse, their combat prowess would immediately increase greatly. This faction was the most criticized. For the sake of finding strong corpses, these people would often dig up the graves of people, opening coffins and digging up corpses. The corpses of ordinary people were not worthy of their attention. They only dug up the graves of the noble clans and large sections. These powers all had strong ancestors and were their first targets. Before the Tianwu dynasty, these people even dug up the corpse of a great emperor. The great emperor who had turned into a corpse was even more horrifying than when he was alive. No one in the continent could defeat him. However, in the end, they incurred the wrath of the public. The Tianwu emperor personally made a move and killed all the experts of this faction. From then on, this faction fell into decline. After the Tianwu dynasty, it completely disappeared from the world. Aside from this faction, there was another faction in the running corpse sect. This faction used corpses to prove their Tao. They used a special cultivation technique to refine themselves into corpses that were neither human nor ghost. Chapter 191. Compared to the other faction of the running corpse sect, they were much more low-profile and even stranger. For the sake of proving their Tao, some of them even slept underground for thousands of years. Back then, when the Tianwu emperor killed his way into the running corpse sect, he killed all the experts of this faction. However, some of the old monsters hiding underground managed to escape. Although this faction survived, their cultivation technique was too strange. No one was willing to learn the Tao of corpses. Hence, the running corpse sect completely disappeared. After Xiaoqin heard Ma Chen introduce the running corpse sect, he felt suspicious and asked, according to what you said, the corpses of the miners in the mine clearly do not have any combat prowess. Why did they turn them into corpses? Ma Chen smiled faintly and said, naturally, they do not have any combat prowess. If the bodies are not strong enough, there would not be any qualitative changes after turning them into corpses. The truly strong ones should be the first batch of corpses that we met. Only after they were refined using a special method would they have combat prowess. As for those miners, it should have been done in passing. After all, it is not difficult for them. Xiaoqin revealed a furious expression. He clenched his left fist tightly and said, are these people so inhumane? They do not even let off ordinary people who have no grudges with them. Ma Chen smiled and said, humane? These things that are neither human nor ghost, how can they be humane? They are no longer humans. Otherwise, they would not have incited public anger in the first place. After thinking for a while, Ma Chen said, I wonder where Elder Yi and the others went. We are trapped here, unable to advance or retreat. If we do not get out, we might be trapped here until we die. The exit of the mine was a secret. It was impossible for these inner sect disciples who were here on a contribution mission to know about it. There were specialized people who used secret treasures to trap them before bringing them out. If anything happened to Yi Wen and the others, Xiaoqin and Ma Chen might not be able to get out of here. If they died here, their corpses might even be refined into corpses. Xiaoqin trembled at the thought of it. However, when he thought about it, he felt that nothing would happen to Yi Wen. Back then, when Xiaoqin told Yi Wen about Mu Xinya and Supervisor Li, Yi Wen's expression was very calm. He even warned Xiaoqin not to be nosy. Now that Xiaoqin thought about it, Yi Wen was hinting to him that he already knew about this matter. He was warning him not to alert them. Bang! Xiaoqin ferociously punched the wall to the side. The force of the punch was more than 1,000 jin. When the punch landed on the wall, a hole the size of a bowl immediately appeared. Stone chips fell down. If Yuan had known about this long ago, the lives of these miners could have been spared. However, for the sake of his own plan, Yuan did not move these miners away to avoid alerting the enemy. When Xiaochen thought about the miners, he felt that it was not worth it. That night, Supervisor Zhao knelt before him and begged him to help the miners whose contracts were due at the end of the month. At the end of the month, those people could have safely left this never-ending hell-like mine tunnel to meet their wives and children and reunite with their families. But now, all of this was for naught. He thought that he had tried his best to take care of them and let them leave safely, but in the end, he had personally killed these miners who had turned into dried corpses. Yuan, you are too ruthless. Ma Cheng said in astonishment. Junior Marshal Brother Yi, what are you trying to do? Don't think too hard. There will always be a way out. Elder Yi and the others will definitely deal with these dried corpses. At that time, there will naturally be a way out. Who? Before Ma Cheng finished speaking, Xiaochen suddenly made a move. He chopped at Ma Cheng's neck with his hand. Before Ma Cheng's astonished gaze, Xiaochen knocked him out. Xiaochen looked at the slowly collapsing Ma Cheng and said, I'm sorry, I have to find that person and ask him for an explanation. Senior Marshal Brother Ma, I can only wrong you for now. After Xiaochen said that, he dug a shallow hole in the ground and slowly placed Ma Cheng's body in. Then, he used the soft soil to bury Ma Cheng's body. With Ma Cheng's cultivation, breathing under such soft soil was not a problem. This way, those dried corpses would not be able to find him. While he was unconscious, he would be safe. After doing all this, Xiaochen walked forward with a determined expression. Yuan was definitely in that place, in the cave that suppressed the Demon King. Xiaochen had been there once before. He basically remembered the route. As long as he found the mechanism, he would be able to rush there. After walking for a while, a petite figure slowly walked out from the corner in front. In the pitch-black tunnel, he could not see her appearance clearly. However, Xiaochen was very familiar with this person. After interacting with her for half a month, Xiaochen could easily recognize her from her silhouette, Mu Xinya. Mu Xinya looked at Xiaochen and smiled faintly. Senior Marshal Brother Yi, Xiaochen could not be bothered to speak any nonsense. He drew the lunar shadow saber with a huang-dang sound. When the saber left the scabbard, there was a resplendent electric light. The instant the electric light flickered, the pitch-black tunnel was incomparably bright. The expressions of the two of them froze under the electric light. Xiaochen's expression was cold, there was no expression on his face. Mu Xinya's cute face revealed a faint trace of grief. Blue Dragon Cloud Soaring Art, Roaming Dragon's 9 Transformations, Qingyun Peak Secret Technique, Clear Wind Chop. Xiaochen executed the high-level technique of the Blue Dragon Cloud Soaring Art, the Roaming Dragon's 9 Transformations. The instant the electric light disappeared, Xiaochen left behind 9 afterimages in the air. His feet did not touch the ground. Every afterimage changed directions in the air. 9 cool breezes blew in the tunnel. In an instant, Xiaochen executed 9 clear wind chops in a row. The saber was hidden in the wind, there was no killing qi. It was like a gentle lover whispering sweet nothings in the cool breeze. It was tender and sweet, like a spring breeze warming one's face. Shua! The 9 afterimages merged together. Xiaochen sheathed his saber and stood quietly behind Mu Xinya. His delicate and ordinary face was expressionless, filled with frost. Pu Qi. Blood spurted out of the 9 death acupoints on Mu Xinya's chest. Bai Hui, Qingming, Jiwei, Zhuk, Shinkei, Qihai, Guanyuan, Zhongji, and Xiugu. She fell to the ground with a bang. If the 9 death acupoints on Mu Xinya's chest were struck by a saber at the same time, even if one was as strong as a martial saint, they would die immediately. There was no medicine that could cure them, no one could save them. Mu Xinya's complexion turned pale. She smiled bitterly. I thought that after working together for half a month, even if you wanted to kill me, you would let me finish speaking first. I did not expect Senior Brother Yi to be so heartless. Xiao Chen said in a cold voice, I did not expect that under your innocent appearance, there was such a cruel heart. I thought that even if you had some ulterior motive, you would not implicate so many innocent people. Xiao Chen knew that he was not a good person. However, he would not do such a heartless thing. However, this girl in front of him had subverted some of the bottom lines he held in his heart. In this world where the strong preyed on the weak and the survival of the fittest, there was already a lack of morals. People respected martial arts, the bigger the fist, the bigger the reason. From the first day he arrived in this world, the moment he was humiliated by the Shao clan, he had already thoroughly understood this principle. However, there were some things that no matter how the world changed, there was a bottom line that he had to hold on to. Killing the innocent for no reason was a bottom line that he had to hold on to. Mu Xinya had already crossed Xiao Chen's bottom line. She deserved to die. If Yuan did not have a reasonable explanation, he would seek justice for those miners who had died. Pooh! Pooh! Just as Xiao Chen was preparing to leave, Mu Xinya's corpse started to move. Xiao Chen quickly stopped and looked over. A corpse transformation. Under Xiao Chen's suspicious gaze, Mu Xinya's skin looked like it had been sliced open with a knife, it split open with a shwa sound. A human figure slowly came out of the skin. She was completely naked, she was not wearing any clothes. Her silver hair flowed behind her. In the dark tunnel, the silver hair gave off a faint glow, making the girl in front of him look like a fairy. Her snow-white skin was faintly discernible in the dark night, it was extremely alluring. Xiao Chen's gaze pierced through the darkness. However, he did not pay attention to the part that would make people vomit blood. Instead, he stared at the person's ears. It was a pair of pointed ears, like the fairy in the movies, they were extremely beautiful. However, there were no fairies in this world. This pair of ears were obviously not human, it was clear who this girl was. She was a demonic woman, a fiend race woman. Mu Xinya waved her hand and a long white robe appeared on her body. She quickly put it on in front of Xiao Chen, covering up all her body parts. Mu Xinya looked at Xiao Chen and said, Senior brother Yi, it is not convenient for me to tell you the reason for this. The entire spirit mine is in chaos now. Stay here and don't move. After I settle this, I will bring you out. I said it before, I will do my best to find an opportunity to save you and return the favor. Who? Who? After Mu Xinya spoke, her figure flashed and turned into a silver bolt of lightning. She quickly disappeared from Xiao Chen's sight. Her speed was actually faster than Xiao Chen's small perfection blue dragon cloud soaring art. Xiao Chen was stunned for a while. In the instant he was stunned, Mu Xinya's figure had already disappeared. Chase! Xiao Chen followed the path that Mu Xinya had taken and chased after her. He discovered that the path that Mu Xinya took was to the place where the Fiend King was being suppressed. It was the same route that Xiao Chen remembered. All the traps along the way were activated. Xiao Chen followed without any obstructions. After a while, he finally arrived at the huge underground cave. Chi! 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 Before Xiao Chen got close, he could hear the sounds of intense fighting. The sounds of killing shook the sky and angry roars resounded. Xiao Chen hid himself and extended out his spiritual sense. He carefully observed the situation in the cave. Within the cave, the underground river acted as a boundary. The Divine Saber Camp's Blades men who were suppressing the Fiend King all stood there with their sabers in their hands, not making a move. On the other side of the river was a large army of corpses. They were all the corpses that had been refined using a special method. A rough count gave at least 1,000 corpses. Furthermore, new corpses continued to pour out from the underground. They filled up the huge underground cave. With one glance, it was enough to make one's scalp go numb. A large group of Heavenly Saber Pavilion martial saints were guarding the river, engaging in an intense battle with the corpses that wanted to cross. The scene of the intense battle far surpassed Xiao Chen's expectations. The clear river water was already dyed red. The strength of these corpses also surpassed Xiao Chen's original estimation. Even a martial saint expert would not be able to kill these specially refined corpses in one strike. Chapter 192. There were only 200 martial saints in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. This was far less than the number of corpses. They were in a very passive position, they were having a hard time defending. However, the main forces of both sides had not made a move yet. The Divine Saber Camp's bladesmen stood in front of the Fiend's sealing stone. They withdrew their killing chi and held their sabers tightly, they had no intention of making a move. Xiao Chen looked for a long time, but he did not discover any martial monarch experts in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. There were only 10 martial king elders standing in the distance, expressionlessly observing the situation on the battlefield. Among this group of martial kings, Xiao Chen found Yuan. Yuan was the same as before, his expression did not reveal what he was thinking. He was very calm, as though everything was under his control. On the side of the running corpse sect, there were no strong corpses. There were only 3 huge corpses standing in the middle of the battlefield. These 3 corpses were 5 meters tall. They had dark skin and a thick black chi flowed out of their bodies. The corpses roared continuously. Xiao Chen only took a glance from afar and felt a huge pressure, it made him feel fear. Are these 3 corpse kings? Xiao Chen thought in horror. For a corpse to become a corpse king, it had to be at least a martial monarch when it was alive. After it died and was refined into a corpse, it had to retain the martial techniques and combat experience it had when it was alive. Under the special control of the running corpse sect, it was much stronger than a regular martial monarch. This was because they had an undying body, they did not fear pain. They had muscles of copper and bones of steel, impenetrable by weapons, impervious to fire and water. Beside the 3 corpse kings, there were hundreds of 2-meter-tall corpses. They were covered in black chi and were tall and sturdy. Their aura was different from the other corpses. These should be the mutated corpses that were second only to the corpse kings. In terms of strength, they would be able to hold their own against a martial king. Behind the corpse kings, there were 10 people dressed in black. They stood quietly in the shadows of the corpse kings. Xiao Chen discovered Supervisor Li among them. Further back, Xiao Chen's spiritual sense discovered more than 10 corpse monarchs standing there, not making a move. These were the successors of the running corpse sect, who cultivated the Tao of corpses. They had turned themselves into something that was neither human nor ghost. Compared to regular corpses, they had the thoughts of a normal person. They were extremely difficult to deal with. Regular martial kings would not be a match for them. Xiao Chen was suspicious. With such a strong lineup of the running corpse sect, why are the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's people so calm? There are only 10 martial kings. Although the Divine Saber Camp's bladesmen had a horrifying baleful aura, they were only peak martial saints and medial-grade martial saints. No matter how experienced they would not be a match for the corpse king. The battle in the river was leaning more and more towards the running corpse sect's side. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion's martial saints' formation slowly crumbled. Many of the corpses rushed to the other side. However, before these corpses could get far, a few powerful forces flew over and smashed them into pieces. Their skin, which was harder than metal, was as soft as tofu in front of this force. Xiao Chen took a closer look and discovered that the energy came from the martial kings. The strength of a martial king was indeed different from that of a martial saint. With just one strike, Xiao Chen could easily shatter these mysteriously refined corpses. After King Wu made his move, the situation that was already leaning towards the running corpse sect slowly became balanced again. Who? Suddenly, a silver figure flew over from the sky. That person's silver hair was extremely dazzling. His agile body landed firmly beside the 3 corpse kings. Supervisor Li frowned and walked forward. Princess Mu, why are you only here now? Mu Xinya looked at the situation and said indifferently, I am dealing with some private matters. There is no need to worry about it. What is the situation now? Supervisor Li said, for some reason, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's Supreme Elder has not come out yet. I am unable to grasp the situation, so I did not attack. Mu Xinya thought for a while before saying, there is no need to worry about it. Let's just attack. Once the demonic ancestor comes out, no matter how many Supreme Elders the Heavenly Saber Pavilion sends, it will be pointless. Supervisor Li asked, are you confident? If you fail, then the 100 years of hard work of the Running Corpse sect will all be for naught. Mu Xinya took out a black arrow flickering with light. She said, this is my race's ancient forbidden weapon. It has been passed down since the ancient era. Furthermore, it has been refined by our descendants for thousands of years. As long as I can enter the 9 subduing saber demon formation, I am confident of shattering the fiend's sealing stone. At that time, all the realms in the spirit mine will be destroyed. The spirit stones inside will be ownerless. There is a large number of spirit stones in the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion. It will be sufficient for you to revive the Running Corpse sect. After Supervisor Li heard this, he thought for a while and discussed with the people behind him. Finally, he made up his mind and said, attack. The 10 black-clothed men controlling the corpses kept changing their hand gestures. The corpses on the ground all flew up with a bang and flew over. Within the cave, there was a ka sound coming from the walls in all directions. It was like a flower was blooming. Corpses jumped out one by one. These corpses seemed to have gone berserk. Their strength increased significantly in an instant. The situation tilted in the Running Corpse sect's favor. Before the remaining 100 martial saints in the river could retreat, they were torn to shreds by these corpses. The 10 martial kings of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion exchanged glances. They executed their movement techniques and quickly rushed to the back of the cave, allowing the berserk corpses to charge at them. Kill! Just at this moment, the 100 Bladesmen of the Divine Saber camp finally made their move. They shouted at the same time, their voices shaking the ground. The entire cave trembled slightly. A surging killing chi was released without holding anything back. It linked together and formed a vast sea. A formless baleful aura enveloped the entire cave. The baleful aura penetrated into the bones. Even though these were corpses that had died long ago, the instinct that came from their flesh and blood caused them to tremble continuously. Bang! 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 The sabers were drawn. The sound of hundreds of sabers being drawn resounded throughout the cave. The sabers were 1 meter long and 2 centimeters wide. There was a scarlet glow on the body of the saber. With one look, one could tell that this was not an ordinary saber. This saber was called the Bloodsucker Saber. When the saber was inserted into a living person's body, with a special cultivation technique, it could instantly suck the blood of a living person dry. There was once a powerhouse of the Divine Saber camp who sucked his opponent dry with one saber strike. The forging method of the saber had been lost long ago. There were only 1,000 of them left in the Divine Saber camp. Those who were not disciples of the Divine Saber camp, even core disciples, could not obtain this saber. After the 100 Bladesmen of the Divine Saber camp made their move, the situation immediately turned around. Those refined corpses that even martial saints found hard to deal with were refined corpses. In front of the Divine Saber camp disciples, they only used one saber strike to suck the corpses dry. After the corpses died, they turned into strands of black resentment and flew into the saber. The more corpses they killed, the more horrifying the resentment absorbed by the Bloodsucker Saber became. These Divine Saber camp disciples were like demons from hell, their expressions were extremely malevolent. They looked very ferocious, even more horrifying than the corpses. The more resentment there was, the denser the baleful aura on their bodies. The speed and strength of their sabers increased explosively. Using killing to prove the Tao, Shaochen thought to himself in astonishment. No wonder when he first saw the Divine Saber camp disciples, he had a horrifying killing intent in his heart. He did not expect the Heavenly Saber Pavilion to have such an evil cultivation technique. Using killing to prove the Tao, using the joy of killing to comprehend one's own martial Tao. All martial techniques had killing as their first goal. This kind of cultivation technique was even more horrifying than using corpses to prove the Tao. Every cultivator who used killing to prove the Tao would have to kill at least 1,000 cultivators in their lifetime. Furthermore, the people they killed could not be of a lower cultivation. Otherwise, it would not be of any help to their cultivation. They could collect the resentment of their enemies after they died and use it to raise their own cultivation. It was very horrifying. A cultivator who used killing to prove the Tao would be able to hold his own against an opponent one realm higher than him. If the opponent was careless, he could even kill them easily. The most important thing was that these people were not afraid of death. The closer they were to the edge of life and death, the more excited they would be. Their strength would even increase exponentially. There were only 100 divine saber camp bladesmen, but they were able to defend the 9 subduing saber demonic formation like an iron bucket. It was airtight and watertight. Any corpses that got close were instantly killed. Under the control of the black-clothed men, the corpses continued to charge forward. In an instant, the sounds of killing shook the sky. They were like thunder. The entire underground cave was like hell on earth. It was a tragic sight. Blood flowed like a river. Not long after, the divine saber camp's bladesmen killed more than 1,000 of the most ordinary refined corpses. However, the divine saber camp had 0 casualties. A boundless black resentment lingered on the bloodsucker saber. If one looked closely, there were countless aggrieved spirits crying out in pain within the resentment. The divine saber camp's people were not fatigued. Instead, under the stimulation of the resentment, they became even stronger. Supervisor Lee was astonished. Although he knew that the divine saber camp was very strong, he did not expect them to be so horrifying. Killing these refined corpses was as easy as chopping vegetables. Mu Xinya said indifferently, "Don't be frightened. They are only using a special secret technique to increase their strength. These corpses without any intelligence cannot harm them. Conserve your strength and use the mutated corpses." Supervisor Lee nodded and waved his hand. The 100 or so mutated corpses surrounded by black corpse chi all jumped over with a "so" sound. The mutated corpses already had a basic level of intelligence. Most of the combat instincts they had when they were alive had been preserved. With just one command, they would automatically attack. Furthermore, he was very strong. When he was alive, he was at least a martial king. After he received the order, he moved like an arrow and instantly flew across the 100-meter-wide underground river, arriving in front of the divine saber camp's bladesmen. Kill! The number of mutated corpses was equal to the number of divine saber camp's bladesmen. The moment both sides came into contact, they immediately started fighting. The mutated corpses were much stronger than the corpses refined from the corpses of ordinary miners. Even the strong divine saber camp's bladesmen could not kill them instantly. The bloodsucker saber in their hands chopped at the mutated corpses, giving off a metallic sound. There were no wounds on the mutated corpses. They gave off a strange laughter and used all sorts of martial techniques they knew when they were alive. Chapter 193. Relying on the strength of their physical bodies, these mutated corpses held a significant advantage over the divine saber camp's bladesmen. As time went by, this advantage slowly grew. Solitary eagle claw. The right hand of a corpse suddenly enlarged. Its 5 black fingers were as sharp as a beast's claw. There was a sonic boom in the air as it stabbed into the body of a divine saber camp's bladesman. That divine saber camp's bladesman revealed an expression of pain. A ruthless look flashed in his eyes as the bloodsucker saber chopped at the neck of this mutated corpse. The skinny corpse revealed a strange smile. It ignored the bloodsucker saber on its body and used its right claw to pull out the heart of the divine saber camp's bladesman. Pu Ci. The bloodsucker saber lit up with a scarlet glow. This final strike sucked out all the bones and flesh from the mutated corpse. Similar scenes were happening in other places. Occasionally, there would be divine saber camp's bladesmen being killed. However, the instant they died, these divine saber camp's bladesmen would kill a mutated corpse with their final strike. The battle was very miserable. It was a scene of mutual destruction. It was very bloody and unbearable to watch. On the other side of the river, Mushinya looked at the scene opposite her. She fiddled with the arrow in her hand and said in a deep voice, "They are going to make their move. Cover me." When the two corpse monarchs heard this, they walked out and quickly followed Mushinya. The divine saber camp's bladesmen in front wanted to block Mushinya's footsteps. Before they could get close, they were slapped away by the two corpse monarchs. The wind from their palms contained a huge force. With a schwa sound, they sent the divine saber camp's bladesmen flying. The 10 martial kings of the heavenly saber pavilion watched the situation from afar. They watched as Mushinya led the two corpse monarchs towards the 9 concealed saber demon formation, step by step. Mushinya had a bad premonition. Why does it feel easier than I imagined? The defenses of the heavenly saber pavilion should not be so weak. Whatever, as long as the fiend ancestor comes out, with the sage energy of the fiend ancestor, no one in the heavenly saber pavilion would be able to block him. At that time, all schemes would be useless in front of absolute strength. Go, demon-slaying arrow. The so-called forbidden artifacts mostly referred to artifacts that could only be used once or twice or thrice. They were refined by artifact refiners in ancient times, and because of the limited number of times they could be used, most of them possessed peerless power that could shake heaven and earth. Under Mushinya's control, the black arrow gave off a dazzling black light. A destructive aura came from the arrow. A gust of wind appeared around Mushinya. A strong wind came from Mushinya's surroundings and spread out in all directions, except for the two corpse monarchs. The mutated corpses and the divine saber camp's bladesmen were instantly blown away by the strong wind. Within 100 meters, there was a huge empty space. Whoosh! The sound of the arrow tearing through the air could be heard. A ray of light flashed by and the arrow collided with the suppressing demon stone, causing a huge explosion. The huge stone shattered into countless pieces. Rumble! The instant the demon-suppressing stone shattered, the entire cavern began to shake. Even Xiao Chen, who was standing far away, began to sway left and right because of the sudden shaking. Roar! There was a loud roar coming from below the demon-suppressing stone. It sounded like it came from ancient times. Suddenly, a huge beast claw stretched out and smashed the ground violently. This attack did not differentiate friend from foe. The divine saber camp's bladesmen and corpses that could not dodge in time were smashed into mush. Bang! The ground shook again. Another huge beast claw smashed out. Another large number of mutated corpses and divine saber camp's bladesmen were smashed to death. When the 10 heavenly saber pavilion martial kings hidden in the depths of the cavern saw the fiend king coming out, their expressions started to change. Yuan said, "The fiend king is coming out. It is time to inform the 7 peak masters and supreme elders." The other 9 people nodded and waved their sleeves. A jade strip shot out from each of their hands. The jade strips gave off a faint spiritual light and formed a strange formation in the air. Mysterious talisman scripts floated out from the jade strips and turned into motes of starlight. It was incomparably resplendent. Xiao Chen's spiritual sense did not notice this. Instead, he was looking at the demon-suppressing stone in astonishment. The peerless fiend king slowly walked out. At this moment, the fiend king's figure was completely revealed. It was a 50-meter-tall huge wolf. Its white fur was very dazzling in the dark tunnel. It had 2 huge fangs that flickered with a cold light. Its scarlet eyes flickered with a faint red light. The aura of the peerless fiend king spread out. The surrounding divine saber camp's bladesmen and the corpses that had been dead for a long time all trembled. They could not help but prostrate themselves on the ground. It was like there was a huge pressure on their shoulders. They could not breathe or get up. Ah! The fiend king roared angrily. There was an unending string of explosions in the air. It was deafening, causing one's scalp to go numb. The Fiend King grabbed the soul chains and with a pu sound, the 9 soul holy weapons stuck in the ground shook non-stop. Finally, they could not withstand the Fiend King's horrifying strength and were all pulled up and tossed far away. Hoo-chi! A huge claw grabbed a divine saber camp bladesman like it was grabbing a mouse. That bladesman struggled violently in the Fiend King's grasp, but he did not fear anything. Poo-ci! The huge claw clenched ferociously and crushed the divine saber camp bladesman's bones. He bled from his 7 orifices and died. The Fiend King tossed the divine saber camp bladesman's corpse into the air. When it fell, it tore it in half, causing a large amount of blood to fall. The huge wolf opened its mouth and blood poured into it like a fountain. Bang! It punched the wall and the entire cave started shaking violently again. Rocks fell continuously from above, shaking the cave. This was the strength of the peerless Fiend King. Just a casual wave of its hand could cause the ground to shake. When the group of black-clothed men from the running corpse sect in the distance saw the boundless might of the Fiend King, they revealed an excited expression. It has been more than 100 years. I finally see hope. Who in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion can block such a strong force? My running corpse sect is destined to rise in this era. Mu Xinya's petite body knelt respectfully on the ground. She said in a deep voice, the Heavenly Wolf Race's 180th successor of the Wang clan greets the sage ancestor. It has been 1,000 years, a whole 1,000 years. This king is finally out. Ha 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 ha. I want to wash the Heavenly Saber Pavilion in blood, to take revenge for being trapped here for 1,000 years. The peerless Fiend King laughed maniacally. After a while, he stopped. He looked at Mu Xinya on the ground and said, Rise, my descendant. I can feel the pure heavenly wolf bloodline in your body. I will bestow upon you supreme glory. Mu Xinya stood up and said, It is Mu Xinya's glory to be able to rescue the sage ancestor. Now, the heavenly wolf race is in a dangerous situation in the ancient desolate land. Wind and rain are everywhere. Sage ancestor, please consider the bigger picture and leave this place quickly. The Fiend King muttered, There is no problem. I have already recovered 1/5 of my strength. If I want to leave the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, no one will be able to stop me. When I take away the spirit veins origin and advance to Fiend Emperor, the entire world will submit to the feet of the Heavenly Wolf race. 1/5 of my strength is already so strong. If I recover all my strength, how strong would I be? Xiao Chen thought in horror. Who? A figure quickly flew towards Xiao Chen. When he felt the wind, Xiao Chen's heart tightened. He executed the blue dragon cloud soaring art and quickly retreated. However, just as Xiao Chen stabilized himself, a skinny claw suddenly came out of the ground and grabbed hold of his right foot. The skinny claw pulled gently and an irresistible force was transmitted. Xiao Chen's body was like a sandbag as he crashed into the wall. After that, he landed heavily on the ground. I did not expect an ant-like person like you to be able to dodge the attacks of hundreds of refined corpses. After struggling to stand up, Xiao Chen clearly saw the appearance of this person. He discovered it was the corpse monarch that knew the earth evasion technique. He wore golden robes and had a dazzling golden crown on his head. The strength of the corpse monarch was unfathomable, it was at least a martial king. Compared to Xiao Chen, who was an inferior grade martial grand master, it was a realm higher. Xiao Chen would not even have a chance to escape. Boom! As Xiao Chen was thinking, the corpse monarch's hard black fist was already flying over. It was a straightforward punch without any fancy moves. It carried a huge force as it smashed towards Xiao Chen's face. This was the corpse monarch relying on his speed and strength. It was an ordinary punch, not a martial technique. However, when the corpse monarch executed it, it was very imposing, the wind whistled. Before Xiao Chen could think, the black fist was already in front of him. Relying on his instincts, Xiao Chen clenched his right fist and punched out. Bang! The fists collided. The two of them relied on the strength of their physical bodies. The huge force created a spiral ripple in the air. It did not dissipate for a long time. The other party's strength was much stronger than Xiao Chen's. Xiao Chen was sent flying like a sandbag by this punch, crashing into the wall behind him again. The force from the corpse's fist jolted Xiao Chen's internal organs, causing them to churn. Blood leaked out of the corner of Xiao Chen's mouth. He had sustained significant internal injuries. This was the first time Xiao Chen was at a disadvantage in a competition of physical strength. Xiao Chen had cultivated his physical body for more than 10 years when he was young. Then, he tempered it with the 7 seven-leaf flowers. His entire body could be said to have been reborn. The force of a punch could reach more than 1,500 kilograms of force. It could easily shatter rocks. However, that corpse monarch specialized in cultivating his physical body. His entire body had already turned into a corpse. After cultivating for more than 100 years, a casual punch of his could reach 5,000 kilograms of force. 5,000 kilograms of force versus 1,500 kilograms of force. It went without saying who was stronger. The corpse monarch looked at Xiao Chen, who was struggling to stand up again. There was a surprised expression in his eyes. His punch looked casual, but the force contained within it was enough to cripple a martial saint's right hand. Even a martial saint would be able to cripple his right hand easily. His opponent was only a martial grand master. This punch should have shattered his heart and lungs. Who? The corpse monarch's figure flashed and his skinny claws grabbed Xiao Chen's neck. He easily lifted him up and placed his other hand on Xiao Chen's chest. Chapter 194. Ga. Interesting, there are actually cultivators who specialize in tempering the physical body. Such a good physical body is sufficient to refine a golden ancient corpse. After I hand you over to my senior brother, he will refine you into an undefeatable corpse. At that time, being undefeatable will be your glory. Seeing that the corpse monarch wanted to refine him into a corpse, Xiao Chen was startled. However, his throat was being grabbed by the corpse monarch. The corpse monarch was like a clamp. No matter how Xiao Chen struggled, he did not fear it. He could not bring out the essence in his body. All his techniques were crippled, there was nothing he could do. The corpse monarch smiled coldly and punched Xiao Chen's dantian with his left hand. After that, he retracted his hand and tapped a few times. Strands of black qi leaked out and slowly entered Xiao Chen's body. Xiao Chen felt a black qi appear in his dantian. It turned into a horrifying cage, imprisoning his martial spirit. All the essence in his body disappeared. Xiao Chen was horrified to discover that he had lost his connection with the blue dragon martial spirit. He could not feel the abundant essence in his body at all. He was no different from an ordinary person. Don't think about it anymore. This corpse king imprint of mine can be used for both offense and defense. It is more than enough to deal with an inferior grade martial grand master like you. With just a thought, I can make you explode and die. After the corpse monarch spoke, he carried Xiao Chen's body back into the cave. Then, he tossed Xiao Chen's body to Supervisor Li. Supervisor Li received Xiao Chen's body suspiciously. After he saw his appearance, he smiled and said, "So, it is little Lord Yi. Why are you in such a sorry state?" Xiao Chen remained expressionless and remained silent. He focused his spiritual sense on his dantian and carefully observed the corpse king imprint, trying to find a way to break it. A black cage stopped in that empty space. Strands of black qi spread out from it. A charred corpse sat cross-legged on top of the cage. One could vaguely see a surging river in the cage. The small blue dragon kept bombarding the black cage. Before Xiao Chen's soul sense could get close, the corpse king sitting on top of the cage suddenly opened its eyes. A bright light swept over and destroyed most of the soul sense that Xiao Chen's soul sense had sent over. Xiao Chen's spiritual awareness could actually be extinguished. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. This corpse king's seal was really incredible. Senior Brother Li, take a look at this kid's body. It might even be possible to refine him into a golden ancient corpse. When Supervisor Li heard this, he revealed an astonished expression. He quickly checked Xiao Chen's body. After a while, he revealed an expression of joy, but it quickly dimmed. This is not an innate divine body. It was tempered in the later stages. It is still not good enough to refine an ancient golden corpse. I will keep it for now. After I water it with the lunar water, it should not be a problem to refine it into an ancient bronze corpse. Rumble. As these people spoke, a few beams of divine light descended from the 9 hidden saber demon formation on the other side of the river. Aside from Qingyun Peak, the peak masters of the other 6 peaks of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion had all arrived. Behind the 6 of them, there were 6 old men standing quietly. Xiaoqin saw Shen Manjun among them. These 10 people were the supreme elders of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. They were all martial monarchs. When the Fiend King saw the crowd, he revealed a mocking expression. It has only been 1,000 years, and the Heavenly Saber Pavilion has fallen to such a level. They do not even have a sage. Watch how I flatten the Heavenly Saber Pavilion today. A person walked out from the crowd. It was the strongest peak master of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, the Tianyue Peak's peak master, Ling Tianzheng. He looked at the 50-meter-tall Fiend King and smiled faintly. You can still smile even at death's door. We have been waiting for this day for more than 100 years. Do you think that without our permission, the Fiend's sealing stone would be broken so easily by this girl? Mu Xinya's expression changed slightly. Could I have fallen for a trap? If that was the case, I would have become a sinner of the clan. Hu Qi. There was a flash of light on the Heavenly Wolf King's body. All the bones in his body gave off a pai li pa la sound. With a xiu sound, he turned into a 2-meter-tall stout man. His silver hair casually flowed behind him, and his muscles bulged. It was an explosive sight to behold. He looked at the crowd and smiled. No matter what plan you have, it is useless in the face of absolute power. Die! Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Ling Tianzheng and the Celestial Wolf King's fists collided. A powerful shockwave caused the space around them to shatter, forming a black crack. The crack extended continuously, like a black tentacle. The surrounding divine saber camps, bladesmen and corpses that did not dodge in time were instantly devoured by the spatial crack. Rise! A gentle but strong energy wrapped around Mu Xinya and easily flung her to the other side of the underground river. Ling Tianzheng's body somersaulted in the air and landed firmly on the ground. He said in a deep voice, "Form the 9 saber demon punishing formation and kill this fiend. Snatch the fiend core and aid us in advancing to martial sage." The 9 soul holy weapons on the ground shattered. The remaining 3 people held onto the soul chains and sealed the surrounding space. A small world materialized in that space. The crowd could only see the blurry chains encircling the space. 9 saber demon punishing formation, kill. Within the space sealed by the soul chains, the sounds of killing filled the air. Light flickered and 9 indistinct figures could be seen, each holding a soul holy weapon. He kept changing his position, conjuring the various formations of the 9 saber demon punishing formation, trapping the Heavenly Wolf King inside. Furious roars rang out from within the formation. It was clear that the Heavenly Wolf King was completely suppressed in this formation. He was at a disadvantage. Mu Xinya got up and walked anxiously to Supervisor Li. "Sect Head Li, I will increase the reward I promised you by half. Quickly go and help. Otherwise, there will be nothing left." The 9 saber demon punishing formation, the 9 saber demon subduing formation, and the 9 saber heavenly exterminating formation were the 3 great formations of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. They were executed by 9 people at the same time. The demon subduing formation was specially used to suppress enemies. Together with the fiend suppressing stone, it could even suppress someone as strong as a martial emperor. As long as the fiend suppressing stone was not destroyed, the people imprisoned in it would never be able to leave. The 9 saber demon punishing formation was specially used to kill enemies. Together with the formation, it could combine the strength of 9 people, allowing them to kill enemies 2 cultivation realms above them. The final 9-saber heavenly exterminating formation was the strongest of the 3 great formations. However, it required 9 martial sages to execute it at the same time. Legend had it that after the 9-saber formation was executed, it could destroy the heavens and the earth, kill gods and exterminate demons. However, the requirements of the formation were too high for the cultivator. In the history of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, there had never been a time when 9 martial sages appeared at the same time. Hence, this formation had never appeared. Whether this 9-saber heavenly exterminating formation existed or not, there had always been many different opinions. No one dared to say for sure. Supervisor Lee had also heard of the might of the 9-saber demon punishing formation. When he saw that the situation was dire, he did not dare to be careless. Senior brothers, whether our running corpse sect can regain its glory or not will depend on today's battle. If we win, we live, if we lose, we die. After Supervisor Lee spoke, he led the black-clothed man to control 3 5-meter-tall corpse kings and another 10 corpse monarchs. They quickly crossed the river. They wanted to destroy the 9-saber demon punishing formation from the outside. In the depths of the cave in the distance, the thing that Yi Wen and the 10 Heavenly Saber Pavilion Martial Kings summoned with the jade strip finally appeared. It was an ordinary wooden box. It was 1 meter long and 2 centimeters wide. Its black exterior made it look very plain. The words, like the Emperor descending personally, were written on the front of the wooden box in bold calligraphy. Yi Wen grabbed the wooden box and took the lead. He led the 10 martial kings over the 9-saber demon punishing formation and blocked Supervisor Lee and the others. Supervisor Lee smiled coldly and said, "You want to block us with just 10 martial kings?" Supervisor Lee did indeed have such confidence. The 3 corpse kings had the strength of a martial monarch. Furthermore, there were 10 corpse monarchs who cultivated the Tao of corpses. Even if there were 10 peak martial kings, they would not be sufficient in front of him. Yi Wen smiled faintly and flipped his palm. The wooden box landed heavily on the ground. He looked at the crowd in a carefree manner. He did not care about Supervisor Lee and the others at all. Supervisor Lee looked at the words, like the Emperor descending personally, on the wooden box. He was stunned for a while before he laughed loudly. "It is just a wooden token. Do you really think that just because it says, like the Emperor descending personally, you are a martial emperor? Even if a martial emperor came personally, I would refine him into a corpse. A bunch of things that are neither human nor ghost, they are boasting shamelessly." Yi Wen revealed a mocking expression. Then, he read softly, like, the Emperor, descending personally. Every time he read a word appeared on the wooden box. It gave off a resplendent and dazzling golden light. His aura rose continuously. After he finished reading the 4 words, the golden light covered Yi Wen's entire body. Every strand of his hair and every inch of his body turned into a pure golden light. He was like a deity descending to the mortal world. His aura rose to the peak. It was like a real martial emperor had descended. Kill! A golden figure of light flew out from the wooden box. It was holding a saber in its hand. In that instant, the light was resplendent and dazzling. The entire underground cave was filled with the golden light. It was so piercing that people could not open their eyes. They felt an incomparable pain. As the light flashed past, the 3 corpse monarchs were split in half. Their black blood splattered across the sky. Mu Xinya's exquisite face revealed a pained expression when she saw that resplendent golden light. She muttered, "It's over. That is a divine weapon. The hope of the heavenly wolf race for hundreds of years is gone, just like that. Divine weapon." Xiao Chen was shocked. This was not the first time he saw this wooden box. Back when he was in the shop outside Saber City and in front of Qingyun Peak, he had seen the same wooden box. In the entire world, there were only 10 divine weapons. However, no one knew where these 10 divine weapons were. Whether the divine weapon was a saber, a spear, a sword, a halberd, or a broadaxe, most people could not tell for sure. However, the strength of a divine weapon was undeniable. It could split mountains, overturn rivers and seas, destroy space, and chop apart the heavens and the earth. None of these were sufficient to describe the might of a divine weapon. Back then, the Thunder King traveled the world in search of all sorts of natural treasures. However, he only managed to forge the substandard divine weapon, the Thunderwood Sword. For the sake of gathering all the battle sage origins, he traveled the world to form a divine weapon. Unfortunately, he did not manage to do so before he died. However, if this wooden box really contained a divine weapon, then it would be too shocking. Back then, outside Saber City, the person who held this item was an old man without a martial spirit. If he had the heart, he might have been able to obtain this wooden box back then. Chapter 195. At this moment, when Xiaoqin saw Mu Xinya's expression, he had very complicated feelings. He hated this woman for being vicious and merciless, but he also sympathized with her. From the very start, she had fallen into the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's trap. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion only wanted to use her to break the Fiend's sealing stone and release the Fiend King. Then, they would kill the Fiend King and take its 1,000 years of cultivation. The Fiend's sealing stone was a strange stone of heaven and earth. It absorbed the essence of the sun and moon, as well as the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It formed naturally and contained a huge amount of energy. Aside from an ancient forbidden weapon, nothing could break it. At this moment, Xiaoqin understood that there was no such thing as absolute good or evil in this world. In terms of ruthlessness, the people of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion were even more ruthless than Mu Xinya. In order to not alert the enemy, they abandoned all the miners in the tunnels. Xiaoqin could roughly understand why the Heavenly Saber Pavilion did this. The calamity from 20 years ago had greatly weakened the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. All the sage cultivators had probably died in that calamity. As a result, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, which had been passed down for tens of thousands of years, had a huge gap in its strength. The huge Heavenly Saber Pavilion did not even have a single sage. In order to make up for this huge gap, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion had no choice but to use this Fiend King that had been locked up for 1,000 years. Be it its spirit core, skin, flesh, bones, or blood, they were all very valuable. As for Mu Xinya, she was completely clueless about all this. In the end, not only did she end up benefiting others, she even lost her life. No, the fate of the Heavenly Wolf race cannot end like this. Mu Xinya revealed a resolute expression. She did her best to gather her aura, preparing to fight to the death. Xiaoqin pulled her back. Although he could not use his essence, he still had his strength. Mu Xinya could not struggle free immediately. Sending yourself to death? You should leave quickly. The people of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion noticed your plan long ago. The ending was decided from the start. Mu Xinya looked at Xiaoqin in astonishment. She did not expect Xiaoqin, who wanted to kill her earlier, to pull her back at this moment. Mu Xinya used some force and shook off Xiaoqin's hand. She smiled and said, "Senior brother Yi, I told you before. My parents told me to come here. Actually, I was not willing. Everyone is afraid of death, but since we're already here, there's no way out. The Celestial Wolf clan also has no way out." Her smile was as bright and beautiful as ever. With a light tap of his feet, his figure swayed on the surface of the river, and he immediately arrived at the other side of the river, joining the battle. On the opposite bank, Yi Wen's entire body was emitting a golden light. He placed his hand on the wooden box and did not move at all. There were figures of light flying out of the wooden box continuously. The 9 martial kings behind him did not even make a move. With just a ray of light from the divine weapon in the wooden box, the people from the Running Corpse sect could not advance at all. The first saber light that was released directly split the 3 corpse kings that the Running Corpse sect entrusted with heavy responsibilities into 2 halves. After that, the light shadow carried a peerless blade edge and swept through the air. The light shadow was dazzling, and the blade light shot out in all directions. The people of Running Corpse sect reacted and were no longer instantly killed by the saber light. However, they could only dodge in all directions and could not find a chance to counterattack. As Supervisor Lee dodged the wanton saber light in the air, he continuously made hand gestures, trying to reassemble the 3 Corpse Kings on the ground. The Corpse Kings already possessed an undying body. If one could not instantly shatter them, it would be very difficult to truly destroy them. As long as the controller was not dead, one could use a secret technique to revive them. If the 3 Corpse Kings could revive, they might be able to turn the situation around. Supervisor Lee could already tell that Yuan could not completely control that divine weapon. The saber light in the air no longer had its initial sharp aura. This was a clear indication of the problem. It was not that the 9 people behind Supervisor Lee did not want to make a move, but that they could not. They used the ground under their feet to transfer their essence to Yuan, allowing him to hold on. Even so, Supervisor Lee felt extremely anxious. Due to the lack of physical strength, the black-clothed men controlling the Corpse Kings had all been killed. Only Supervisor Lee could barely hold on. Normally, because the strength of this Corpse King was too horrifying, it required 3 people to control it. Now that he was the only one left, it would be very difficult to revive it. Hu Chi. A silver figure in the air flew past everyone's heads at lightning speed, heading for Yuan. A huge silver wolf appeared behind her. This was the totem of the heavenly wolf race. It possessed a horrifying might. The huge wolf roared ferociously, creating a heavy sound wave. Shao Chen shattered all the light figures attacking Mu Xinya. Then, he quickly descended. Mu Xinya's right hand pulled back in the air, creating 5 sharp claw marks as she attacked Yuan. The 5 claw marks were as sharp as sabers. They gave off a chi-chi sound in the air. In the blink of an eye, they turned into 5 streams of scarlet energy. As the wind blew, they grew to more than 10 meters in an instant. Yuan did not dare to be careless. He pointed with his other hand and a golden humanoid figure quickly appeared from his body. Clone Chop. This was the secret technique of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's Jade Maiden Peak. Yuan learned it after he left Qingyun Peak. Now that he had the might of the divine weapon, its might was much more horrifying than usual. The figure of light was like a real person. After Mu Xinya dodged an attack, it immediately turned around nimbly and continued attacking. Mu Xinya changed her position 3 times in the air, but she still could not shake off the attack of the figure of light. Mu Xinya slowly calmed down and did her best to remain calm. She released her perception in the air with all her might. After a while, her face lit up with joy. She said indifferently, "Found it." Mu Xinya spun around in the air and swung her hands. A few invisible lights were instantly severed. Yuan used the clone chop and the figure he controlled immediately fell. It turned out that the secret of the clone chop's agility lay in these invisible lights. As long as the lights were severed, the figure of light could no longer be controlled. Ha! Just as Mu Xinya was about to fall, she shouted and leaped into the air like a ferocious wolf. She flew over Yuan's head and landed on the 9 martial kings behind him. Not good, Yuan cried out in his heart. Although Mu Xinya's cultivation realm was not high, if she were to fall, the 9 people behind her would suffer a calamity. These people had to pass their essence to him, there was no way for them to make a move. Right now, any one of them could easily kill these martial kings, who were usually insufferably arrogant. If one of the 9 were killed, the divine weapon that Yuan could barely control would immediately crumble, it would be countered by the divine weapon. Bang! Thinking of this, Yuan's expression turned grave. He took a deep breath and smacked the wooden box with his right hand. A ripple immediately spread out and bounced Mu Xinya back with a boom. Mu Xinya vomited a mouthful of blood and fell heavily to the ground. Yuan, who had executed this move, had an unsightly expression. The speed of the light that flew out of the wooden box also slowed down. The people of the Running Corpse sect, who had been exhausted from dealing with the attacks, finally had a chance to catch their breath. Supervisor Lee took advantage of this opportunity and quickly formed hand seals. The two halves of the Corpse King's body slowly merged together. Bang! 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 Just at this moment, there was an unending chain of explosions within the Nine-Saber Demon Punishing Formation. Cracks appeared in the space sealed by the soul chains before it shattered. The Nine-Saber Demon Punishing Formation was broken. Everyone stared at this scene in astonishment. Soon after, they came to their senses and immediately retreated, fleeing from this region. The destruction of a small world had created such a destructive power. Even a martial king would not dare to face it head-on. Bang! A deafening sound rang out and the void shattered. The entire underground cavern shook incessantly. The water in the underground river surged and huge rocks fell from the top of the cavern. Xiaoqun carefully dodged the huge rocks above him. He did his best to balance his body. At this moment, he could not use his essence. If he fell, he might be smashed by the huge rocks before he could get back up. Hu Qi! Hu Qi! 12 figures flew out of the Nine-Saber Demon Punishing Formation. The soul holy weapons and soul chains in their hands had already shattered. All of their faces were incomparably pale. Ha ha ha! The Nine-Saber Demon Punishing Formation is only so. A desolate laughter came from within the surging dust. When the dust settled, the Heavenly Wolf King's stout figure slowly appeared. There were no other injuries on his body. His silver hair fluttered in the wind and his aura was as ferocious as before. The soul holy weapon specialized in attacking the soul. If a soul was destroyed, leaving behind an empty shell, naturally, it would not be able to exist alone in the world. The reason why Ling Tianzheng and the others chose to use the soul holy weapons to attack the Heavenly Wolf King was because his physical body was much stronger than a regular person's. If they used a physical weapon, it would not have much of an effect. However, they did not expect that even though the Heavenly Wolf King had only recovered a fifth of his strength, his soul energy was much stronger than his physical body. The Nine-Saber Demon Punishing Formation materialized a total of 81 formations and 9,999 killing moves. Even with the soul holy weapons, they still could not do anything to the Heavenly Wolf King. After attacking for a long time, the Heavenly Wolf King actually found the weak point of the Nine-Saber Demon Punishing Formation. He attacked with all his might and shattered this small space. The Heavenly Wolf King's aura flourished and filled the sky. His gaze was like a torch as he scanned the surroundings. Everywhere his gaze passed, it caused the hearts of everyone to tremble. Hey! The Heavenly Saber Pavilion's divine weapon. The Heavenly Wolf King's gaze landed on the wooden box in Yuwen's hand. His face lit up in joy as he said, with this divine weapon, our chances of obtaining the spirit vein's origin will be higher. Withdraw. The Heavenly Wolf King spread his fingers and sent out a huge force, traveling a distance of several dozen meters. Yuwen felt his grip loosen and the wooden box was already in the Heavenly Wolf King's hands. The situation of the entire place turned around in an instant. Xiaoqun watched all this in astonishment. He originally thought that the 12 Supreme Elders of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion would work together to execute the Nine-Saber Demon Punishing Formation against the Heavenly Wolf King, who had lost his sharpness after being imprisoned for 1,000 years, it would be easy. There were no surprises. Xiaoqun did not expect the Nine-Saber Demon Punishing Formation to break so easily. Although the Heavenly Wolf King's soul energy was significantly weakened, the 12 Supreme Elders suffered from the backlash of the formation. They were even more injured. They could not do anything to the Heavenly Wolf King. They could only watch as he obtained the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's divine weapon. Actually, if the Nine-Saber Demon Punishing Formation had been laid with a physical weapon, there might have been a different effect. The Heavenly Wolf King's body hadn't moved much in the past 1,000 years, so its bodily functions had definitely been weakened. Chapter 196. However, soul strength was different. In the past 1,000 years, the Heavenly Wolf King had been cultivating his soul strength when he was bored. Xiaoqin could not be bothered with all this. He was currently doing his best to break the Corpse King imprint in his body. His spiritual sense turned into tens of thousands of arrows, shooting at the cage in his dantian. As long as a strand of spiritual sense could enter and contact the blue dragon martial spirit, he was confident of working together to destroy the Corpse King imprint. The black cage slowly spun. The Corpse King, who had been sitting on it the whole time, swept its gaze across. The arrows formed by the spiritual sense were all destroyed. Xiaoqin did not give up. He looked for an opportunity to play hide-and-seek with the Corpse King with his spiritual sense. When Supervisor Li saw the situation turn around, he revealed a sinister smile. He controlled the Corpse King and the 10 corpse monarchs to charge at Yuan and the others. The commotion was very vast. All the Divine Saber Camp's Blades men who were still able to fight rushed over and started a chaotic battle. Sand and rocks flew and a strong wind blew. The scene became intense once again. On the other side, of the 12 Heavenly Saber Pavilion Supreme Elders, the one with the highest cultivation, Shen Manjun, said sullenly, "There is no need to worry. The divine weapon cannot bring out its full strength in his hands. The damage to his soul is also greater than we imagined." An old man at the side added, "That's right. If we continue to attack, there is still a chance." The Heavenly Wolf King smiled coldly and used some force to knock open the wooden box in his hand. He said, "Let me take out this divine weapon that no one can wield. Let's see who can stop me then." The wooden box shattered into pieces and an ancient saber appeared. The saber was about 1 meter and 2 centimeters long. There were all sorts of ancient talisman scripts carved on the scabbard. The saber gave off a reserved glow and spiritual energy spread out. The Heavenly Wolf King's expression turned cold. He grabbed the saber hilt with his right hand and used a huge force to pull it out. Ka-xie. Before the astonished gazes of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's people, the Heavenly Wolf King managed to pull the saber out by 1 centimeter. The Heavenly Wolf King's face lit up in joy. If he could pull out this divine weapon, even if his soul energy was injured, he would only be able to bring out a fifth of his strength. Even if he had to face the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion, he would not fear it. "Stop him, we can't let him pull out the Tianyu blade, otherwise the entire spirit mine will be destroyed." Ling Tianjin roared. 12 figures executed their best moves as they flew at the Heavenly Wolf King with lightning speed. Boom! Before the Heavenly Wolf King's smile faded, the saber revealed 2 centimeters. Suddenly, it released an intense, piercing, and dazzling light. A destructive energy came from the saber. Time seemed to come to a standstill. Everyone in the cavern was frozen in place. Their hearts were as clear as a mirror, and yet, they couldn't move their bodies. A faint blue energy ripple spread out in the air, and in the face of this irresistible power, the Celestial Wolf King bore the brunt of the attack. Despite how powerful he was instantly sent flying. Xiaoqin spat out a mouthful of blood. After he landed on the ground, the energy in the divine saber entered his body, giving off a crackling sound. His body kept rolling on the ground, and after a while, he turned back into a giant silver wolf that was more than 50 meters tall. No one had expected such a result. The insufferably arrogant Heavenly Wolf King was actually knocked back to his original form by a ripple from the divine saber. If all the divine weapons were drawn, how strong would they be? After the Heavenly Universe saber released an intense light, the saber immediately returned to its scabbard and floated quietly in the air. The horrifying energy instantly vanished. Dang! 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 The broken wooden box on the ground quickly flew into the air and reformed, storing the divine weapon Heavenly Universe saber inside. Instantly, the aura of the divine weapon vanished. Everyone's bodies returned to normal. Shen Manjun stretched out her hand, and the wooden box flew back into her grasp. She glanced at the Heavenly Wolf King and said expressionlessly, "I forgot. These 10 divine weapons were forged in the ancient era for the purpose of fighting against the fiend race. As a member of the fiend race, without the strength of a fiend emperor, he actually dares to pull out the divine weapons of humans. He overestimates himself. There is no need to care about him. He suffered a backlash from the divine weapon and will not be able to use his strength for a period of time. Leng Tianjing nodded and said, "Go and deal with the remnants of the running corpse sect first. Then, we will discuss how to deal with this beast." With the addition of the 12 Heavenly Saber Pavilion Supreme Elders, the running corpse sect no longer had the strength to resist. They could not retaliate and were forced into a retreat. A corpse monarch tried to use the earth evasion technique to escape. However, Leng Tianjing discovered it. He snorted coldly and stomped on the ground. The ground trembled like water and the corpse monarch was knocked out. Mu Xinya took advantage of the chaos and sneaked over to the Heavenly Wolf King's side. With the Heavenly Wolf King's huge body as a cover, the people of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion did not discover the petite Mu Xinya. "Sage Ancestor. Sage Ancestor. Are you all right?" Mu Xinya whispered anxiously into the Heavenly Wolf King's ear. Blood flowed out of the Heavenly Wolf King's mouth continuously. His eyes were filled with dissatisfaction. He was just one step away from obtaining the Spirit Vein's origin and advancing to Flying Fiend Emperor. He would become the first person in thousands of years. Under his leadership, the Heavenly Wolf race would rule the world. The entire Fiend race would rise once again. However, in the end, all his efforts would be for naught. One wrong step and he would fall into a bottomless abyss, losing everything. The Heavenly Wolf King turned its huge head slightly and looked at Mu Xinya in front of it. It slowly raised its left claw and used its sharp claws to make a crescent wound on Mu Xinya's forehead. Blood immediately spurted out from Mu Xinya's forehead. She was startled. She knew what the Heavenly Wolf King was going to do. She said, "Sage Ancestor, you can't." On the other side of the battlefield, the people of the Running Corpse sect had already been mostly wiped out. Only a few corpse monarchs were still resisting tenaciously. The Corpse King controlled by Supervisor Li had been crushed into dust by the 3 martial monarch supreme elders. There was no way for him to revive. Suddenly, boundless black qi came out from Xiao Chen's pores. When the black qi dissipated, the Corpse King imprint in his body instantly vanished. It turned out that the corpse monarch that had used the Corpse King imprint had already been killed by one of the supreme elders. Naturally, the Corpse King imprint that he had set up had dissipated. When the essence returned to Xiao Chen's meridians, his face lit up in joy. His body had completely recovered. Xiao Chen thought to himself, "Since I no longer have anything to worry about, I should leave this place." "Who?" Just as Xiao Chen was preparing to leave, a figure tore through the air and arrived before Xiao Chen at lightning speed. Without saying anything, he attacked. That figure was the Biyun Peak's Peak Master, Song Quebec. He had accidentally seen Xiao Chen's figure earlier. A killing intent instantly surged out. He immediately stopped fighting and flew towards Xiao Chen at lightning speed. With Xiao Chen's current cultivation realm, he could not even see the trajectory of a peak martial king's movement technique and the speed of his attack. He could not react in time. Xiao Chen immediately received a punch to his dantian. Song Kei's new and old grudges merged together. He did not hold back in this punch at all. Bang! Xiao Chen's eyes were filled with shock. His body flew into the air like a kite with its string cut. The blue dragon, which had just regained its freedom, was smashed into pieces by this peak martial king's punch. It turned into balls of azure light and dissipated within his body. Spiritual energy flowed out of his body like flowing water. Xiao Chen thought in horror, "It's over, my martial spirit is destroyed. I am crippled for life." This was Xiao Chen's last thought. Before he had the time to think further, he had already fainted. With a pu tong sound, he sank into the underground river. The rapid current of the river immediately washed Xiao Chen's body downstream. "Yi Chen." Yuan sent a corpse flying with a palm strike. He was completely stunned by this sudden turn of events. He looked angrily at Song Ke and revealed a sinister expression. He said, "How dare you kill my Qing Yun Peak's disciple? I want your life." Yuan pushed his feet off the ground and he had already crossed the river and arrived beside Song Quebec. The small saber in his hand created a cool breeze. The saber was hidden in the cool breeze as it chopped towards Song Ke's chest. The two of them were both martial kings. Song Ke's cultivation was originally much higher than Yuan's. However, he had suffered from the backlash of the 9-saber demon punishing formation earlier. Furthermore, he had used his full power in that earlier attack. At this moment, his essence was insufficient. When the Great Perfection Clear Wind Chop was executed, the saber could not be seen at all. It was impossible to defend against. Song Ke dodged in a sorry state. He could not even catch his breath. He was actually beaten up in such a manner. "Go to hell!" Yuan suddenly roared. The saber hidden in the cool breeze suddenly moved closer to Song Quebec. It spun very quickly. This was another secret technique of Qing Yun Peak, mysterious wind chop. Song Ke originally thought this attack was still the clear wind chop. He was caught off guard. The spinning saber created countless air currents. It was very fast. At such a close distance, it was impossible to dodge. Damn it, I was too careless. I actually allowed him to execute the mysterious wind chop at such a close distance, Song Ke thought vexedly. Actually, he had not expected that Yuan would actually kill him, a peak master, for the sake of an insignificant Shao Chen. Even though Song Ke had already retreated quickly to the side, the speed of the mysterious wind chop was simply too fast. Song Ke had no way of dodging it. Pu Ci. One of Song Ke's arms was chopped off. The mysterious wind formed by the saber instantly tore his arm into pieces. A large amount of blood and flesh scattered in the air. "Ah!" Song Ke cried out in pain. He looked at his left arm, which had been smashed into pieces. His face revealed a horrified expression, he could not believe what had happened. "Die!" Yuan turned around and kicked the distracted Song Quebec. He waved the small saber in his hand in the air. The saber left a few afterimages in the air, piercing towards Song Ke's heart. When it was only an inch away from Song Ke's chest, a few Supreme Elders saw the situation and rushed over. A martial monarch Supreme Elder made his move at lightning speed. He stretched out his fingers and caught the saber that Yuan was thrusting at him with. He shouted angrily, "Yuan, what are you trying to do? You are going against your superiors. Are you tired of living?" Yuan used some force and twisted his wrist, freeing the small saber from the old man's fingers. He said indifferently, "Killing a fellow disciple for no reason. Even if he is a peak master, he has to die. Is the matter of a peak master something for an insignificant elder like you to speak? The Law Enforcement Hall will investigate the matter and give justice to your Qing Yun Peak disciple," a Supreme Elder at the side said. Chapter 197. Yuan smiled coldly and said, "Law Enforcement Hall. What a joke. You are already so old, yet you still dare to speak of the Tao of the Law Enforcement Hall. Impudent." Seeing that Yuan did not care about them, one of the Supreme Elders could not help but feel embarrassed. He could not help but send a palm strike at Yuan. Martial monarchs could already comprehend the laws of space. Although the old man's palm strike was an ordinary one, after it was infused with the laws of space, it was clearly extraordinary and unfathomable. The palm wind was clearly heading for Yuan's chest. In the end, just as Yuan was about to receive it, the palm wind suddenly disappeared and attacked his side. Boom! The difference in cultivation was too great. Yuan was a medial grade martial king. However, this ordinary palm strike knocked him back. He vomited a large mouthful of blood and fell heavily to the ground. Who? Shen Manjun, who had finally killed all the running corpse monarchs, leaped into the air. Her footsteps were light, as though she was taking a stroll in the park. In an instant, she arrived beside the crowd. Before everyone's surprised gazes, Shen Manjuan's lily-white hands flew towards Song Ke, who was being supported by two supreme elders. There was a loud bang, and a formless palm landed on Song Ke's body. Song Ke immediately struggled free from the support of the two supreme elders. Huang huang huang. Song Ke tumbled back continuously until he reached the side of the underground river before he stopped. Song Ke's expression was extremely miserable. He got up and asked, "Martial Aunt Shen, why?" The two supreme elders, who were in front of Yuan earlier, did not dare to say anything when Shen Manjun made a move. There was no other reason than Shen Manjuan's seniority was the highest. She was also the strongest. Looking at her appearance, it was clear that she was very angry. No matter how good her relationship with Song Ke was, she did not dare to say anything at this moment. She could only think that Song Ke was unlucky. Shen Manjun snorted coldly. Her expression was as cold as frost, she could not be bothered with him. She slowly walked to the side of the underground river and looked at the rushing water. She frowned slightly. Suddenly, Shen Manjun shouted, and all the essence in her body surged. Her clothes fluttered non-stop, and her aura rose rapidly. A strong wind blew, whistling non-stop. She ferociously sent a palm strike towards the riverbank. Hua! In the hundreds of meters of river that ran through the entire underground cave, the rushing river water immediately churned. In the river, there was not a single drop of water left, and all kinds of fish in the water fell continuously. Shen Manjun quickly glanced at the river, but she did not see Xiao Chen's figure. The turbulent underground river had already washed Xiao Chen's body to God knows where. Sighing, he waved his hand, and the river water that was a few meters in the air fell back down with a loud boom. This was the strength of a peak martial monarch. With a flip of their palm, they could cause the rivers to flow in reverse and surge. Shen Manjun stood by the river and pondered for a long time before leaving the shore. Puff! Seeing that Shen Manjuan's anger seemed to have subsided, everyone thought that they were about to heave a sigh of relief. However, the Heavenly Wolf King's gigantic body suddenly let out a crisp sound that resounded throughout the cave. Everyone looked over and saw Mushinya's body floating quietly in the air. She closed her eyes, her clothes fluttering, and her silver hair dancing in the wind. There was a silver crescent moon between her eyebrows, and it rippled as smooth as a mirror. Not good, the Heavenly Wolf King passed down his strength to this girl, Ling Tianjing said loudly. A supreme elder at the side cried out hoarsely, "Earlier, we were all distracted by what happened here. We did not notice the Heavenly Wolf King at all." After this supreme elder spoke, everyone looked at the one-armed Song Ke with resentment. If he had not killed Xiao Chen, there would not be so many problems. Otherwise, how could the Heavenly Wolf King have the opportunity to pass down his strength to Mu Xinya under their noses? Once he passed down his strength, it would be impossible to snatch it back from Mu Xinya. This was because Mu Xinya's current cultivation had not reached the stage where she could condense a sage core. If she was killed, the energy that the Heavenly Wolf King inherited would scatter into the world. Furthermore, the more horrifying thing was that the instant before this girl died, the Heavenly Wolf King's 1,000-year cultivation would explode. The entire underground cave would collapse. Of the people present, only a few would be able to survive the explosion. The others would not be able to escape unscathed. This was also the reason why no one made a move even though they were furious. How hateful! Shen Manjun shouted and sent a palm strike at Song Quebec. The palm wind was like thunder, instantly sending Song Ke flying into the underground river. She had already lost close to 300 years of her lifespan. Although she did not show any signs of dying in a sitting posture, there was no guarantee that she would be in danger at any time. Only by entering the sage realm could she be completely safe. At this moment, Song Ke had spoiled the situation. She wished she could kill him with a palm strike. Song Ke, who only had one arm left, thrashed about in the water with all his might. The poor martial king's essence was messed up by this palm strike. He had to drink a few mouthfuls of water before he crawled to the shore. Mu Xinya suddenly opened her eyes and a bright light shot out from them. She looked at the crowd and said, "Heavenly Saber Pavilion, you had best not touch my sage ancestor's body. I will be back." After she spoke, she threw out a jade strip. The jade strip turned into a ball of flame and flew to Mu Xinya's feet. Her body slowly turned into a strand of flame and disappeared into the underground cave. Divine Flame Talisman. There is actually such a thing. When a Supreme Elder saw Mu Xinya throw out the jade strip, his face was filled with despair. The Divine Flame Talisman was a teleportation secret treasure. After it was burned, it could bring its owner thousands of kilometers underground, vanishing into nothingness. It was said that the refinement method of this talisman had been preserved in the Great Jin Empire. However, it was extremely expensive. Each talisman required 2,000 inferior-grade spirit stones. Furthermore, it could only be used once. Using it once was equivalent to expending 2,000 inferior-grade spirit stones. Although this price was expensive, it was not worth mentioning when compared to one's life. Originally, there were people who were planning to lock Mu Xinya up after she completely absorbed the energy of the Heavenly Wolf King's inheritance. Then, they would extract her energy after she refined a sage core. Although it would take a long time, it was not impossible. Now that Mu Xinya used the Divine Flame Talisman, all these thoughts were gone. A Supreme Elder sighed, 100 years of effort. In the end, it was all for naught. Although the old Fiend King is dead, a new Fiend King has appeared. I wonder if the Heavenly Saber Pavilion can withstand another attack from a Fiend King. There were many tributaries in the underground river, the undercurrent was very turbulent. After Xiaochen fell into the river, he was unconscious. When he sank to the bottom, he did not know where he was washed to. The blue dragon came from the water. Xiaochen, who possessed the blue dragon martial spirit, could hold his breath underwater for a long time. He did not need to breathe. However, now that Xiaochen's martial spirit was destroyed, he was like an ordinary person, he did not have any special abilities. Logically speaking, after Xiaochen sank to the bottom of the river, he should have drowned after 2 hours. His abdomen would have swelled up. After 10 hours, he would have floated up again and turned into a corpse. However, Xiaochen's current situation was very strange. His blue dragon martial spirit had already dissipated and he was completely crippled. However, he could still breathe underwater. As the undercurrent rose and fell, he did not know where it was going. Occasionally, there would be all sorts of water plants and duckweed entangling him, and fish and prawns would rise and fall. 2 days later, Xiaochen woke up from his unconscious state. He felt a splitting headache, and he felt very weak. His body swam in the water. Under the impact of the ferocious undercurrent, it was difficult for him to even turn around. When Xiaochen felt the condition of his body, he felt it was strange. He did not understand why he could still breathe underwater after his blue dragon martial spirit had been destroyed. Calm down, Xiaochen kept repeating to himself as he swam in the river. Although he could breathe underwater, the situation was still very dangerous. Song Kei's peak martial king attack had not only destroyed his martial spirit, but the internal energy that had spread out had also caused great internal injuries to his body. His internal organs were all damaged to varying degrees. If it were not for the fact that Xiaochen's physique was extraordinary and that he had been tempered by the 7-leaf flower 7 times, his heart and lungs would have been shattered and he would have died. After drifting underwater for 2 days, the injuries in his body had not been treated. Furthermore, he had not eaten anything. Xiaochen's physical strength could be said to be extremely weak. If he did not think of a way to get to the surface in the turbulent river, the problem of his physical strength would only worsen. In the end, he would die. While he was thinking, Xiaochen had already been pushed a few hundred meters away by the undercurrent. Xiaochen could not help but fear the ferocious undercurrent in his heart. Xiaochen faced the undercurrent and did his best to control his body to turn around. A surging undercurrent suddenly attacked him, causing Xiaochen's body to flip over. Guru! Guru! This sudden situation caused Xiaochen to swallow a few mouthfuls of water. In the midst of the chaos, Xiaochen grabbed a large amount of seaweed in the water and did his best to stabilize his body. This seaweed was rather sturdy. When Xiaochen wrapped it in his hand, although the undercurrent was still ferocious, it could no longer carry it away. The seaweed, which was as thick as an arm, stabilized Xiaochen's body. Xiaochen finally caught his breath and looked up. Although the river was somewhat turbid and he could not see the surface clearly, the light was not dim. This meant that the river was not too deep. Since that was the case, Xiaochen had to think of a way to get to the surface. The main thing preventing him from getting to the surface was the undercurrent at the bottom of the river. If he let go of the seaweed in his hand, the undercurrent would immediately wash him down. This undercurrent was only about 5 meters thick. It was at the deepest part of the river. As long as he crossed this 5 meters, there would be no undercurrent. At that time, he would be able to get to the surface naturally. If Xiaochen still had his essence in the past, he could easily leap out of this underground river with one breath. When he landed, even the water on his body would quickly evaporate. However, not only was he severely injured, his martial spirit was also destroyed. He could not raise his essence and had not eaten for 2 days. As long as he let go of the seaweed in his hand, the surging undercurrent would immediately wash him down. After resting for more than half an hour, Xiaochen carefully observed his surroundings. He slowly touched the 2 sides of the riverbed and discovered that the slope was filled with silt. When he stepped on it, he immediately sank half a meter deep. Xiaochen was delighted. He thought of a way to get to the shore. As long as he followed the slope and stuck his arm into the silt, he would be able to slowly climb up. Chapter 198. To be safe, Xiaochen first found a 10-meter-long strand of seaweed and wrapped it around his waist. Then, he carried out his plan. In the turbulent undercurrent, every step was incomparably difficult. When Xiaochen reached the top of the slope, he did not dare to be careless. He climbed up step by step. The undercurrent attacked his body continuously, nearly washing him away a few times. Xiaochen dug his palms deep into the silt and poured all the black silt into his fingernails. He barely managed to avoid the undercurrent. After dodging the undercurrent with much difficulty, Xiaochen loosened his body and removed the seaweed around his waist. After a while, he emerged from the water and took a deep breath. Then, he quickly rowed towards the shore. After reaching the shore, Xiaochen was extremely tired. The dizziness intensified. He did his best to stay alert and control his desire to lie down. Then, he removed all his wet clothes. Xiaochen took out some dry clothes from the universe ring and put them on. Then, he swallowed a blood-replenishing pill. After doing all this, he dragged his body to a cliff by the shore. Then, he leaned against it and closed his eyes to rest. Unknowingly, Xiaochen fell asleep. He was simply too tired. When he woke up again, Xiaochen's spirit had recovered. With the help of the blood-replenishing pill, his injuries had also healed. Xiaochen took out some dry rations and water from the universe ring. After he ate them, his strength slowly recovered. He wolfed down the dry rations and gulped down a large mouthful of water. Only then did Xiaochen get up and look around him. He was in a rather dark cave. Xiaochen wanted to release his spiritual sense instinctively. In the end, he discovered that there was no reaction. The spiritual sense that he had been using in the past did not appear. Xiaochen could not help but smile bitterly. It looked like he had really become a cripple. He slowly walked to the riverside. The calm river water reflected Xiaochen's pale face. Due to soaking in the river for too long, Xiaochen's skin had turned frighteningly pale. Some parts of his skin had even peeled off. The appearance that Xiaochen had changed using the shape-shifting spell had already returned to its original state. However, he could not be bothered with this now. After he cleaned off the mud from his fingernails, he turned around and looked at Xiaochen. After he cleaned off the mud from his fingernails, he walked in the direction of the river. No matter what, he had to find an exit first. Dee-da. Dee-da. Occasionally, water droplets would fall from above. The instant the water droplets landed, Xiao Chen's body instinctively moved backward. The water droplets brushed past Xiao Chen's nose and quickly fell to the ground. Looks like I still have the strength of my body. My combat instincts have not disappeared. Even without essence, I can still sense the direction of the water droplets. Xiao Chen clenched his fist and revealed a joyful expression. Due to gravity, the speed at which the water droplets fell was very fast. Xiao Chen could only rely on his body's instincts to sense the direction in which the water droplets would fall. Then, he could easily dodge them. Even without a martial spirit, I can rely on my physical body to become a martial sage. What the predecessors could do, I can do as well. A determined look appeared in Xiao Chen's eyes. After walking for a long time, the light in front of him slowly brightened. Xiao Chen could not help but increase his pace. After a while, the scene before him opened up. Even without a martial spirit, I can rely on my physical body to become a martial sage. What the predecessors could do, I can do as well. A determined look appeared in Xiao Chen's eyes. A vast underground world appeared before Xiao Chen's eyes. It was a few hundred meters tall and had an unknown length and width. There were trees, plants, flowers, and rivers. It was unknown where the light came from, it was very strange. Xiao Chen hesitated for a while before he stepped in. It was as though he had passed through a barrier. Time stopped for a short moment, it was almost negligible. Afraid that something was wrong, Xiao Chen paced back and forth a few times. When he discovered that he could safely return, he did not pay much attention to it. Crunch! Crunch! A few birds suddenly flew past the forest in front. Xiao Chen was slightly startled. There were actually living creatures here. He had to be careful. If there were any ferocious beasts, it would be troublesome. Bang! Bang! Just as Xiao Chen was thinking this, a huge spirit beast dashed out of the forest. This was a scarlet flame bear. When it stood up, it was as tall as 2 grown men. Its red eyes were filled with a baleful aura as it looked at Xiao Chen. The scarlet flame bear was a rank 2 spirit beast. It was equivalent to a martial master. Xiao Chen had seen it before in the periphery of Seven Horn Mountain. It looked very ferocious, but there was nothing special about it. However, it would be difficult for the current Xiao Chen to deal with it. Pooh! Pooh! Just as Xiao Chen was thinking, the scarlet flame bear ran over on all fours. Soon, it arrived in front of Xiao Chen. It sent out a palm strike with a force of several hundred kilograms. Xiao Chen did not panic. Before the front paw of the scarlet flame bear could reach him, he sensed the direction of the wind. He calmly took a step to the left and dodged the attack. Xiao Chen shouted and poured all his strength into his right fist. All the muscles in his right arm bulged up. It was like Xiao Chen felt a boundless power. He punched at the chest of the scarlet flame bear at lightning speed. In the next moment, the scarlet flame bear's sturdy body was sent flying with a bang. The sound of its internal organs shattering came from its body. After it fell to the ground, it could not get up again. Xiao Chen looked at all this in astonishment. After a while, when he saw that the scarlet flame bear was really dead, he muttered, "How is this possible? Even at its peak, the strength of my punch was only 1,500 kilograms. Now that my martial spirit is shattered and my injuries have not healed completely, it is already an extraordinary performance to be able to display even half of my strength." The scarlet flame bear's weight had already reached 500 kilograms. If Xiao Chen wanted to send it flying with a punch and shatter its internal organs, he would need at least 4,000 kilograms of strength. Xiao Chen looked suspiciously at his own fist. He did not dare believe it. "I feel like I did not use all my strength in that punch earlier. Why is my strength even stronger than before?" Xiaoqin could not figure it out no matter how he thought about it. He walked into the forest and found a scarlet flame bear at the periphery. When it was about to approach him, he punched it again. Just like before, this scarlet flame bear that weighed 500 kilograms was sent flying. Its internal organs were shattered and it died. Only now did Xiaoqin believe that everything was real. His strength was even stronger than before. Could it be that my cultivation realm did not disappear? The strength of my punch should be around 3,500 kilograms of force, close to 4,000 kilograms. Otherwise, it would be impossible for me to kill the scarlet flame bear in one punch, Xiaoqin said with certainty. What exactly is going on? Why did my physical strength increase? Xiaoqin thought hard for a long time, but he still could not figure it out. After a while, Xiaoqin smiled faintly. Never mind, an increase in strength is a good thing. Since I cannot figure it out, I should not think too much about it for now. Thinking of this, Xiaoqin left the forest. The depths of the forest gave him a dangerous aura. There should be other stronger spirit beasts. Xiaoqin spent the remaining time exploring this unknown underground world. In the southeast direction, Xiaoqin unexpectedly discovered a natural herb field. It was lush and verdant, filled with all sorts of spirit herbs. Many of the spirit herbs were over 100 years old. However, before Xiaoqin got close to the herb field, he could already feel a few strong auras. Occasionally, he could hear the terrifying roars of beasts. These were all strong spirit beasts. With Xiaoqian's current state, he could only watch from afar and shrink back. Seeing a mountain of treasure but not being able to get it was quite depressing. Xiaoqin avoided this area and continued moving forward. Although his martial spirit was destroyed, his physical strength was still there. His speed was not slow either. In one day, Xiaoqin had explored a radius of 1,000 meters. He discovered that he had completely underestimated the size of this underground world. After walking for one day, he had not even covered half the distance. For some unknown reason, the underground world also had day and night. As time passed, the light slowly turned dim. In the night, there were always some unknown dangers. Xiaoqin did not dare to stay here. He retreated all the way to the edge of the underground world before slowly stopping. Sitting down cross-legged, Xiaoqin decided to cultivate once more. Even though his martial spirit was destroyed, he had not completely given up. The blue dragon martial spirit was an ancient holy beast. It definitely had something extraordinary about it. Right now, there was no trace of spiritual energy in Xiaoqian's body. He was now truly an ordinary person. He was much weaker than when he first came to this world. At the very least, he still had the spiritual energy that he had cultivated for more than 10 years. Although he could not convert it into essence, it was more than enough to circulate the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. Now that there was no trace of spiritual energy in his body, he might have to wait another 16 years before he could reach his previous cultivation realm. If that was the case, no matter how strong Xiaoqian's willpower was, he would have to give up. Xiaoqin felt the surrounding spiritual energy and guarded his dantian. He breathed in and exhaled. His spirit pedestal was calm as he repeated these two actions continuously. This was the most basic breathing technique in the Tianwu continent. Aside from those with innate martial spirits, most people did not have any spiritual energy when they were born. Without spiritual energy, there was no way to circulate any cultivation technique. At this moment, one had to practice the breathing technique, absorbing some spiritual energy into one's body. When the amount of spiritual energy in one's body reached a certain level, one could officially start cultivating. The breathing technique did not have any grades, it was common throughout the continent. Slowly, the qi that Xiaoqin breathed out became more solid. From a distance, it looked like a mist-like sword, lingering for a long time. Who? In the next moment, when Xiaoqin breathed in, the spiritual energy turned into a faint mist. It flowed through Xiaoqian's mouth and slowly flowed out of his meridians. The spiritual energy circulated around his body before settling in his dantian. It was about the size of a pinky finger. Xiao Chen rejoiced in his heart. He did not expect the first strand of spiritual energy he absorbed to be so big. Soon, he would be able to gather enough spiritual energy to circulate the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. His earlier worries about needing another 16 years were groundless. He had already experienced this process once. It made sense that the second time he gathered spiritual energy would be much smoother. After 4 hours, the spiritual energy that had settled in his dantian was sufficient to circulate the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. Xiao Chen stopped breathing and prepared to circulate the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. Hua! The Purple Thunder Divine Incantation successfully circulated without any obstruction. The surrounding spiritual energy immediately poured into Xiao Chen's body in a frenzy. It was endless, completely exceeding Xiao Chen's expectations. Chapter 199. Why is it like this? Xiao Chen was startled. Suddenly, he remembered what Yuan had told him before. If he forcefully cultivated in this underground, there was a risk of his body exploding. Xiao Chen's expression could not help but change greatly. He wanted to stop, but he was not resigned to it. Back when he was cultivating the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation on Seven Horn Mountain, he had encountered such a situation and successfully condensed his martial spirit. If he gave up now, it would be too much of a pity. If he missed this opportunity, he might not have any hope of condensing his martial spirit again in the future. I'll just go crazy for once. The path of cultivation is filled with thorns. I have to fight with the heavens, fight with others, fight with myself. I have to be ruthless to everyone. If I can't even get past this hurdle, how can I fight with others in the future? Not to mention fighting with the heavens. After making up his mind, Xiao Chen steeled his heart. Not only did he not stop, he even sped up the circulation of the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. Thunder roared in the sky. A whirlpool appeared above his head, spinning continuously. It quickly sucked in the surrounding spiritual energy before sending it into Xiao Chen's body. Bolts of lightning flashed in the air. Wind and thunder roared, and mysterious phenomena appeared. Xiao Chen's body was not calm either. Spiritual energy filled his entire meridians. Now, Xiao Chen's meridians were much wider and more resilient than before. The amount of spiritual energy they could contain was also several times more than before. If Xiao Chen's meridians were not stable, he would explode until not even his bones remained. Boom! Just as Xiao Chen felt like he could not hold on any longer, all 361 acupoints in his body opened with a boom. There was actually a tiny azure dragon in every acupoint. The 361 blue dragons opened their mouths and sucked, instantly sucking in all the spiritual energy in Xiao Chen's body, saving Xiao Chen's life. The whirlpool above his head did not stop. Immediately, new spiritual energy poured in. Just as Xiao Chen was about to collapse, the 361 azure dragons in his acupoints opened their mouths and sucked in again. The spiritual energy in his body was sucked dry once more. From afar, Xiao Chen's 361 acupoints were emitting a blue glow. His entire body was like a blue dragon, forming a huge blue dragon. Swallowing clouds and spitting out mist, he roared furiously as he controlled the various phenomena in the world and accepted the baptism of lightning. It turns out that my martial spirit did not disappear. It was just divided into 361 small blue dragons and stayed in the acupoints of my body. Xiao Chen thought in pleasant surprise. Every time the blue dragon in his acupoints breathed in and out, Xiao Chen felt as if his entire body was cleansed by spiritual energy. It was extremely comfortable. After repeating this a total of 361 times, the mysterious phenomenon in the sky disappeared. The whirlpool above Xiao Chen's head entered his body with a "so" sound. The spiritual energy in the world finally stopped pouring in. The whirlpool formed a miniature qi whirlpool in Xiao Chen's dantian. As it spun slowly, drops of liquefied qi dripped down slowly. At the start, the speed at which the qi whirlpool dripped was very fast. Every time it spun one round, a drop would fall. In the end, it became slower and slower. Even after it spun more than 10 times, not a single drop fell. When Xiaoqin counted carefully, he did not know if it was a coincidence or not, but there were exactly 361 drops of mysterious liquid. Xiaoqian's mind moved. When he looked carefully, he discovered that this liquid was actually extremely pure essence. I clearly did not condense a martial spirit. It is just a qi whirlpool, yet it can actually turn spiritual energy into essence. This is really strange, Xiaoqin said doubtfully. Looks like my martial spirit really did not scatter. It is just a different form of existence. This is good as well. Condensing essence from the qi whirlpool is much faster than before. Xiaoqin controlled the essence in his body and slowly circulated it. He discovered that his cultivation realm did not fall. In terms of purity and quantity of essence, he had broken through to medial grade martial grand master. After circulating his essence for a great cycle, Xiaoqin opened his eyes. A purple light pierced through the dark night sky before turning into 2 spots of purple light and disappearing from his eyes. Xiaoqin got up and looked into the distance. He clenched his right hand into a fist and energy filled his entire body. This feeling of regaining control over his strength made Xiaoqin feel very carefree. He could not help but let out a long roar. It was like the roar of a dragon, it was long and continuous, reverberating in the surroundings. Ha! Xiaoqin punched through the air and punched a huge rock 50 meters in front of him. The Fengyan acupoint on his palm suddenly opened and the blue dragon in it disappeared. It turned into strands of azure light and spread to his arm. In an instant, his entire right hand was filled with a huge energy. The powerful force followed the direction of the punch and hit the 2-meter-tall boulder with a loud bang. The boulder immediately shattered into pieces and scattered in all directions. The blue dragon in the acupoint could actually turn into an azure light and attack along with the fist wind. This was a pleasant surprise. Furthermore, it was very strong. This is just the blue dragon in one acupoint, and it already has such a strong might. If I were to open all 361 acupoints in the future, how strong would its might be? Xiaoqin thought in anticipation. He tried punching a few more times. In the end, he discovered that the acupoint on his palm was already completely closed. No matter how hard he tried, he could not open it. It should be that he had used up all his energy and was temporarily unable to use it. Xiaoqin was not worried. There was still time in the future, there was no need to rush. In the following period of time, Xiaoqin took out the lunar shadow saber from the universe ring and executed all the martial techniques he knew. He could execute all the martial techniques without any obstructions. Furthermore, they were even more refined. Their might was much stronger than before. Only then did Xiaoqin relax. It seemed like he had completely recovered his strength. Not only did the peak martial King Song K's punch not shatter his martial spirit, it even allowed his strength to improve. Perhaps this was the true face of the blue dragon martial spirit. Breaking down and rebuilding, establishing a brand new system. This completely stimulated the blue dragon martial spirit that he did not know how to use in the past. A silver warship flew quickly a few hundred meters in the sky. Xiaoqin stood at the bow as the wind whistled past his ears. He extended his spiritual sense into the surroundings, carefully checking his surroundings. After his essence recovered, he could use his spiritual sense and secret treasures. When the sky brightened, Xiaoqin piloted the silver warship and flew towards the natural herb field. There is a rank 5 spirit beast lightning ox in the northeast direction. It is guarding a rank 6 herb, phoenix blood vine. The phoenix blood vine is a natural herb. It can be used directly to strengthen a cultivator's qi and blood. There is an unknown python in the northwest direction. It should be a peak rank 5 spirit beast. It is guarding a golden lotus. According to the Compendium of Cultivation, the golden lotus is the main ingredient in refining the profound returning pill. It is worth 100 inferior grade spirit stones. There is a one-eyed wolf in the south. It is a peak rank 5 spirit beast. It is guarding a rank 6 herb, needle leaf grass. It is worth 50 inferior grade spirit stones. Now that Xiaochen possessed his spiritual sense, he quickly scanned the situation in the herb field from high up in the sky. This underground space was filled with spiritual energy. There were also all sorts of natural treasures. With such a good place to cultivate, Xiaochen did not intend to leave for now. He was prepared to cultivate here. He urgently needed some herbs to strengthen his physical body. Who? Xiaochen recalled the silver warship into his right eye and slowly landed in the northeast direction of the herb field. There was a scarlet phoenix blood vine there. It could be used directly to strengthen a cultivator's qi and blood, directly raising the strength of the physical body. Although it could not compare to the 7-leaf flower, which had a rebirth effect, to Xiaochen, it was still a rare item. After consuming it, it should be able to increase his strength by 250 kilograms. Xiaochen landed firmly on the ground and walked towards the lightning ox. The lightning ox had purple fur all over its body. It was at least twice the size of the water buffaloes on Earth. There was a silver horn on its head. It could instantly release horrifying lightning, numbing the body of a cultivator. A weaker cultivator would be electrocuted into charcoal. Roar! Seeing Xiaochen getting closer, the lightning ox roared angrily at Xiaochen. A rank 5 spirit beast already had a certain level of intelligence. It could tell how dangerous Xiaochen was, so it warned him not to get any closer. Xiaochen smiled faintly and ignored it. He pushed off the ground with his feet and the muscles in his body swelled up. He was filled with explosive power. He relied on the strength of his physical body and leaped towards the lightning ox. The lightning ox's reaction was very fast. The instant Xiaochen leaped up, it stomped on the ground with its hooves, kicking up a cloud of dust. It charged towards Xiaochen, who was flying through the air. When the lightning ox collided with its body, which weighed 1,000 kilograms, it had a force of 2,500 kilograms. Its aura was very ferocious, it could easily crush a small hill. Xiaochen did not dodge. He clenched his fist tightly, giving off a crackling sound. He gathered all his strength into his right fist and punched the lightning ox's head. Bang! One man and one beast collided. A force of close to 5,000 kilograms collided, giving off a loud sound. Ripples spread out in all directions in the air. The taller plants in the herb field were all crushed into powder by the ripples, leaving only the lonely rhizomes. The huge force caused Xiaochen's arm to go numb. His body flew back 5 meters. After he landed, he slid back another 2 meters before he came to a stop. The lightning ox was not in a good state either. It was sent tumbling by the punch. Its huge body rolled a few times on the ground before it slowly came to a stop. The lightning ox immediately stood up. Its eyes revealed a furious expression as it gathered a purple electric light on its white horns. The surrounding lightning attributed energy frantically poured into the ox's horns. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a surging light. Pu-ci. Pu-ci. A purple bolt of lightning tore through the air, flying quickly at Xiaochen. Everywhere the lightning passed, the dust in the air turned into purple ashes. When one looked at it, the lightning looked even more mighty. With one look, one could tell that the might of the purple lightning was not to be underestimated. Xiaochen did not dare to clash head-on. He circulated the blue dragon cloud soaring art and turned into a flood dragon. He moved about in the air, continuously changing his figure. Bolts of lightning chased after Xiaochen, not letting up. After a while, the space around Xiaochen was filled with densely packed lightning, like a cage. Chapter 200. Under the electric light, Xiaochen's hair all stood on end. Although he was not struck by the lightning, the air seemed to be filled with electricity. His skin already had a significant static reaction. Not good. Xiaochen thought to himself, the lightning ox's intelligence is actually so high. The lightning that seemed to be randomly fired out was actually following a certain pattern, gradually gathering together. Shwa! In the sky, 9 bolts of lightning as thick as an arm quickly gathered together. They were like 5 pillars supporting the heavens as they headed for Xiaochen. Heavenly lightning shield. The speed of the lightning was too fast. Furthermore, it was gathering from all directions. Even if Xiaochen's movement technique was exquisite, he would not be able to pass through it. Xiaochen could only defend. Chi 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 chi, when the 9 huge lightning pillars collided with the heavenly lightning shield, they gave off a zzz sound. The heavenly lightning shield had the ability to absorb lightning. However, the strength of this lightning was too strong. It did not last for long before it shattered with a pa sound. The remaining lightning struck Xiaochen's body. There was a pai li pa pa sound on Xiaochen's body. The clothes on the surface of Xiaochen's body were all torn apart. Xiaochen's body was revealed to be filled with explosive muscles. The electricity continued to jump around on his skin. Fortunately, the heavenly lightning shield absorbed most of the electricity. The remaining might was still somewhat weakened. Xiaochen did not receive any fatal injuries. Xiaochen endured the pain in his body and leaped into the air. He arrived beside the lightning ox. At this moment, the lightning ox had used its trump card. It was at its weakest. After it recovered, it would take a lot more time to deal with it. Flight on wings, disordered dance of 1,000 years. Xiaochen's hands moved, changing the original sword move into a fist move. His figure flickered and the wind from his fist howled. In the blink of an eye, he had sent out more than 1,000 punches around the lightning ox. Bang! 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 Every punch contained more than 2,000 kilograms of force. When they landed on the purple body of the lightning ox, it cried out in pain. However, it could not do anything to Xiaochen, who was moving around at high speed. Die! When the disordered dance of 1,000 years was completed, Xiaochen landed beside the lightning bull. The Fengyan acupoint on his right palm opened, and the blue dragon inside transformed into a ball of cyan light, wrapping around Xiaochen's entire right arm. In an instant, Xiaochen once again felt the feeling of his right hand being filled with power like yesterday. With a bang, a series of crisp sounds rang out from within the lightning ox's body. All of its internal organs had been shattered and its huge body was sent flying back dozens of meters. Black blood flowed out of the corner of its mouth. This lightning ox was dead. Xiaochen sat down cross-legged and slowly expelled the electricity in his body. The qi whirlpool in his dantian spun rapidly. The surging essence instantly squeezed or swallowed the electricity in his meridians. After a while, Xiaochen got up and changed his clothes. Then, he walked towards the rank 6 phoenix blood vine and carefully picked it. Then, he placed it in his universe ring. After taking a look at the corpse of the lightning ox, Xiaochen slowly walked over. He took out a small knife and started to dissect it. The corpse of a rank 5 spirit beast was filled with treasures. Xiaochen did not want to waste it. This was especially so for the silver horn of the lightning ox. It should be several decades old. It had been tempered by electricity for a long time. It could be used to forge a lightning-attributed bone weapon. Its value was not lower than the phoenix blood vine. Xiaochen took out a jade bottle and collected the blood. Then, he took out the spirit core and cut off the most delicious parts of the lightning ox's body. Only then did he leave in satisfaction. Originally, he wanted to stay for a while longer and collect all the herbs in the surroundings. However, the earlier battle medicine had attracted the attention of the other spirit beasts. It was relatively easy to deal with one rank 5 spirit beast at a time. However, if there were many of them, it would be very dangerous. Furthermore, among the auras, Xiaochen could feel the aura of a peak rank 6 spirit beast. That was a spirit beast guarding the center of the herb field. Earlier, Xiaochen had checked the place with the densest spiritual energy in the entire herb field. There was a flowing light marigold growing there. The flowing light marigold was an extremely precious rank 7 herb. Just one flowing light leaf had the healing effects of a rank 6 medicinal pill. Furthermore, there were several rare medicinal pills in the compendium of cultivation that required this leaf as a medicinal catalyst. However, the most precious thing was the flowing light flower. The flowing light flower only bloomed once every 800 years. Just one petal was enough to increase a person's intelligence. This was what cultivators referred to as comprehension ability. After consuming it, it would increase a cultivator's comprehension ability greatly. They would be able to comprehend cultivation techniques or martial techniques much faster than ordinary people. It could allow a person with mediocre talent to immediately become talented. For example, Xiaochen had yet to comprehend the highest realm of the clear wind chop. If he consumed this flowing light flower, he might be able to comprehend it immediately. Of course, all of this could only be wishful thinking. Beside the flowing light golden lamp, there was a peak rank 6 spirit beast guarding it all year round. In the surroundings, there were several 6th rank spiritual beasts eyeing him. With so many 6th rank spiritual beasts, before Xiaochen could even get close to them, he would probably die. Recollecting his thoughts, Xiaochen steered the silver warship away before the spirit beasts arrived. He stopped in front of a towering tree not far from the herb field. The tree was several meters wide and towered into the clouds. Its branches were luxuriant, and Xiaochen looked extremely small standing beneath it. There were many treasures in the herb field, and Xiaochen did not plan on leaving. He intended to use this place as his base of operations. Every once in a while, he would go to the herb field and cultivate there. Taking out the phoenix blood vine, Xiaochen revealed a smile. This phoenix blood vine should be at least 100 years old. If he brought it to the market in the heaven viewing platform, it would be worth at least 60 inferior grade spirit stones. Taking out a sharp knife from the universe ring, Xiaochen peeled off the phoenix blood vine. Then, he cut off a small piece and placed it in his mouth. After chewing it a few times, he swallowed it. The phoenix blood vine instantly turned into a warm current that flowed into his body. The qi and blood in his body surged. Xiaochen felt like every cell in his body was burning, filled with energy. Directly chewing natural treasures was very dangerous. Previously, when he consumed the 7-leaf flower and 7-leaf fruit, the timing was rather special. It was when his body was in dire need of energy, so he was not afraid. However, this time was different. Xiaochen's qi and blood were already flourishing. If he directly consumed the entire phoenix blood vine, his vigorous qi and blood would immediately burn up. His body might even spontaneously combust. Xiaochen chewed the phoenix blood vine piece by piece. When he had consumed a third of the phoenix blood vine, he felt like his body was about to explode. So, he quickly stopped. Xiaochen sat cross-legged and started to circulate his energy, completely refining this huge medicinal energy. His essence slowly flowed along the meridians in his body, catalyzing the medicinal energy of the phoenix blood vine. After half an hour, Xiaochen finally finished refining this medicinal energy. He felt his blood boil like it was on fire, filled with energy. Xiaochen looked around and found a huge rock about 1 meter tall that he could encircle with both hands. He walked in front of it and casually punched it. Qi! The hard rock was like mud. Xiaochen directly punched through it before withdrawing his hand. Xiaochen revealed a faint smile. Before I consumed the phoenix blood vine, a casual punch would only have the strength of 1,500 kilograms. After I circulate my qi, it can reach 4,000 kilograms. A full-powered punch can reach 2,500 kilograms. Now, I have only consumed a small portion of the phoenix blood vine, and a casual punch can already reach 3,500 kilograms. If I were to consume the entire phoenix blood vine, it would probably increase my previous strength by 500 kilograms. While he was thinking excitedly, Xiaochen punched with all his might. A force of 2,500 kilograms struck the huge rock. The huge rock shattered into countless stone shards, flying in all directions. Shao Chen was stimulated by the corpse monarch that day. The physique that he had always been proud of was not worth mentioning in front of the corpse monarch. To him, it was a form of humiliation. It made him have an intense and urgent desire for the strength of his physical body. Now that he had such a good opportunity, he had to treasure it properly and continue tempering his physical body. Most cultivators would not be like Shao Chen, stubbornly cultivating their physical body. In their opinion, cultivation realm was the most important. When one's cultivation realm was higher, one's essence would naturally be stronger. If one's physical body could reach several thousand kilograms of force, one could do the same with strong essence. However, Shao Chen did not think this way. He had a vague understanding that the cultivation of a cultivator was inseparable from the physical body. Only by cultivating the strength of the physical body to the peak would one be able to go further in the future. Perhaps these people, like Ji Changkong, Mu Qingxue, Chu Chaoyun, Hua Yunfei, and Duan Muqing, were geniuses with innate martial spirits and incomparable talent. Right now, their cultivation realm was rising very quickly. The highest was probably already a medial grade martial saint. However, in the future, they would surpass martial king, then martial monarch, or the lucky ones would enter the sage realm. Without a strong body, they would not be able to reach Emperor Wu's realm. In the following 2 days, Shao Chen practiced the clear wind chop during the day. He comprehended the 3rd stage of the clear wind chop, only seeing the cool wind and not the saber. After practicing unceasingly, Shao Chen's comprehension of the final stage of the clear wind chop had already reached the threshold. As long as he had a period of time, he would definitely be able to enter the next stage and enter the great perfection stage. At night, Shao Chen would continue to consume the phoenix blood vine. After refining it, he would strengthen his qi and blood and increase his vital qi. On this particular day, Shao Chen placed the last piece of the phoenix blood vine into his mouth and chewed it gently. When he felt a warm flow, he immediately sat down cross-legged and started refining it. Shao Chen slowly circulated his essence. When the last strand of medicinal energy from the phoenix blood vine was completely refined, the phoenix blood vine that had been fused with Shao Chen's body for the past 3 days suddenly surged. The qi and blood in Shao Chen's body surged continuously. Strands of white smoke came out from the top of Shao Chen's head. Boom! After a while, Shao Chen felt the qi and blood in his body explode. Pa! 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 All the bones in Shao Chen's body gave off crackling sounds. All 361 acupoints in his body opened up. Beams of azure light came from the acupoints. If there was an outsider looking at Shao Chen from afar, they would discover the image of a blue dragon coiled around Shao Chen's body, wrapping around him. This sudden situation did not surprise Shao Chen. On the contrary, he felt it was somewhat familiar. It was as if he had experienced this scene 10,000 years ago. Chapter 201. With a thought, Shao Chen muttered, "Open." The Laogong acupoint below the Fengyan acupoint on Shao Chen's right hand released an intense azure light. The blue dragon in the acupoint turned into a clear shadow and covered his entire right arm. Shao Chen opened his eyes and punched out. An azure light left his body and a tree 100 meters in front of him was immediately chopped in half. The azure light did not slow down at all. Shao Chen got up and said in pleasant surprise, "The second acupoint on my right hand is open as well. So this is the way to open it. When my qi and blood reach a certain level, I can choose to open an acupoint. Is this the secret of the blue dragon martial spirit?" Shao Chen muttered to himself. It was like there was a voice in his mind telling him what to do earlier. It was like a dream. Actually, this was also the sorrow of the blue dragon martial spirit. The inheritance of the other 3 holy beasts was not broken. There was complete information to look at. If there was something that he did not understand, the elders of the clan would teach him. Only Shao Chen did not understand anything. He had to figure everything out by himself. There were many simple principles that he could not understand even after thinking for a long time. As a result, Xiaoqin had not used the various mysteries of the blue dragon martial spirit since he started cultivating. It could be said that this was a great sorrow. He had a mountain of treasures, but he could not use them. Recollecting his thoughts, Xiaoqin looked at the herb field not far away. He said, "No matter what, it looks like cultivating the physical body is the right path. The power of the blue dragon martial spirit requires a strong physical body to be able to bring out its full power." Xiaoqin vaguely understood why this body was unable to condense a martial spirit after more than 10 years. It was not because he was not talented enough, but because his physical body was not strong enough at that time. It could not withstand the pressure of condensing the blue dragon martial spirit. Early the next morning, Xiaoqin steered the silver warship to the herb field and found another medicinal herb that could increase qi and blood. The guardian of this herb was also a 5th-rank spirit beast. Xiaoqin was very familiar with the process. After his strength increased by 500 jin, he was able to deal with the rank 5 spirit beast even more easily. Just like last time, he quickly dealt with the spirit beast's corpse, picked the medicinal herbs, and immediately left. 3 days later, Xiaoqin had successfully refined this 100-year-old herb that could increase qi and blood. Unfortunately, his strength had only increased by 250 kilograms. Furthermore, he had not opened another acupoint. On the 4th day, Xiaoqin used the same method to obtain a 100-year-old medicinal herb. This time, after refining it, the effects were even worse than before. It only increased his strength by 150 kilograms. As the number of times he used it increased, the effects of the 100-year-old herbs became worse and worse. In the end, there was almost no effect at all. It was just a simple replenishment of his physical strength. The time that Xiaoqin took to refine the herbs also became shorter and shorter. Now, he only needed half a day to safely refine a 100-year-old herb. After half a month, Xiaoqin finally managed to increase his strength by 500 kilograms with much difficulty. His full power strike now had the strength of 7,000 kilograms. Furthermore, the 3rd acupoint on his right arm, the Daling acupoint, was finally opened. Xiaoqin took a deep breath and opened the Fengyan acupoint, Laogong acupoint, and Daling acupoint on his right arm, one after the other. They gave off beams of azure light. When the 3 beams of azure light overlapped, his entire arm felt like it was about to explode. It was filled with boundless energy. "Kill!" Xiaoqin shouted and leaped into the air. He punched the ground in the distance. The azure light left his body and the 3 beams of azure light merged together. The azure light formed a blue dragon in the air. The somewhat blurry blue dragon charged towards the ground ferociously. In the next moment, bang! 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 There were 3 consecutive explosions on the ground. A large pit with a diameter of 10 meters was blasted open. In an instant, dust flew everywhere, sand and stones flew everywhere. Xiaoqin withdrew his hand and revealed a faint smile. "I have only opened 3 acupoints, and I am already so strong. I wonder how strong I will be after I open all 18 acupoints on my right arm." With Xiaoqian's current cultivation, he had not reached the level where he could externalize his essence. That was a technique that only martial saints could grasp. However, Xiaoqian's azure dragon image was not essence. He did not know what it was. He could only interpret it as the dragon qi of the blue dragon sage spirit. Only dragon qi could be so strong. Unfortunately, the further one progressed, the more difficult it would be to open the acupoints. The 100-year-old herbs that could increase qi and blood were no longer of any use. Xiaoqin looked at the herb field and muttered, "Looks like I have to search for herbs older than 200 years. However, herbs older than 200 years have spirit beasts guarding them. They are all at least peak rank 5 spirit beasts. It will not be easy to pick them." A peak rank 5 spirit beast was equivalent to a human superior grade martial saint. With Xiaoqian's current cultivation as a medial grade martial grand master, it would be difficult for him to challenge it. Riches are found in danger. On the path of cultivation, One has to fight with the heavens, the earth, and people. If one does not even have the courage to fight, then how can one continue on the long path of cultivation? A resolute look appeared in Xiao Chen's eyes. He used his right hand to violently smack the huge tree beside him. Dong! Dong! Just as Xiao Chen was about to sit down and rest, he suddenly had a look of astonishment in his eyes. Something was wrong with this sound. Xiao Chen turned around and revealed a bewildered expression. He looked at the huge tree and sent his spiritual sense into it, trying to see through it. Hua! Just as Xiao Chen's spiritual sense touched the edge of the tree, he felt like his brain was pricked by a needle. The pain was boundless and he quickly withdrew his spiritual sense. Dong! Dong! Xiao Chen knocked on the tree twice again. This time, when he listened carefully, the echo was even clearer. Xiao Chen said with certainty, "There is really something strange. Could it be that there is nothing inside?" Xiao Chen said suspiciously as he looked at the huge tree in front of him. It would require a few adults to encircle it. Xiao Chen took out the lunar shadow saber from the universe ring and grasped its hilt. Essence gathered on the saber, forming a blazing saber light as he swept it at the thick tree trunk. The 10-meter-long saber light swept across the huge tree. With a hua sound, the saber light was absorbed into the tree, vanishing without a trace. Xiao Chen sheathed his saber and said, "Essence attacks are useless. In that case, let's use our fists." Bang! Xiao Chen used his full power and struck the tree trunk with 7,000 kilograms of force. However, the tree trunk did not budge at all. The force extended to the roots buried deep in the ground, causing the entire ground to tremble. It was still useless. Xiao Chen tried all sorts of methods. He wanted to break open the tree trunk and check it out. In the end, it was all to no avail. The more it was like this, the more interested Xiao Chen became. This meant that there was a whole new world inside this tree. Xiao Chen leaped up gently and flew to the top of a branch. He started to check it out carefully. Since he could not attack it forcefully, he could only find the entrance. The leaves of the lush tree fluttered in the wind. It was very troublesome for Xiao Chen to search. He looked up meter by meter. Time slowly passed. When Xiao Chen arrived at the top of the tree, he finally found a tree hole that he suspected to be the entrance. The tree hole was very well hidden, it was covered by a pile of dense leaves. If not for Xiao Chen's meticulousness, he would not have been able to find it. The dark tree hole happened to be the size of a wash basin, it could fit a person. Xiao Chen broke off a branch and tossed it in. After a long time, he heard a faint sound. As long as it is not a bottomless hole, it does not matter. Seeing that the branch had already reached the bottom, Xiao Chen did not hesitate and directly entered. After entering, it was much more spacious. Xiao Chen could turn around and stretch freely. His speed of descent was very fast. Not long after, Xiao Chen landed firmly on the ground. Xiao Chen took out a night illumination pearl and the dark space was illuminated. The scene at the bottom immediately appeared before Xiao Chen's eyes. This was a spacious wooden hut. It was 10 meters long and 10 meters wide. There were simple decorations in the room, they were all very ordinary things. A long painting hung on the wall in front of the hut. There was an imposing man in the painting. He had long hair and was dressed in black. His eyes were like deep water, and his face was like a knife. He stood with his hands behind his back, and there was a saber stabbed into the ground in front of him. The corner of the black-clothed man's mouth curled up, revealing a cold smile. The painter's skills were very high, the expression of this person was very lifelike. Xiao Chen felt that this person looked familiar. When he shone the night illumination pearl on him, it was like the man was right in front of him. Under the illumination of the light, Xiao Chen could clearly see the appearance of this person. After a while, Xiao Chen said excitedly, "This is the Saber Emperor, the founder of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. He is also the only martial emperor of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion." There was a statue of the Saber Emperor on the heaven viewing platform. Xiao had seen it before. However, he had only taken a quick glance and did not have a deep impression of it. Now that he looked at it carefully, he recalled. There was no consensus on who was the strongest in the history of the great Qin nation. However, the Saber Emperor, the Sword Emperor, the First Qin Emperor, the Dark Knight Emperor, the Thunder King, and the other martial emperors in the history of the great Qin nation were all recognized as the strongest. It was a pity that these great emperors were not born in the same era. They had never competed with each other before, so no one knew who was the strongest. Some people said it was the Saber Emperor because he could split a 5,000-kilometer-long river with one saber strike. Some people said it was the Misty Sword Sect's Sword Emperor because he once went to the great Jin nation to challenge the Jin king. Everyone had their own opinions. However, it was undeniable that these people were experts who once stood at the peak of the great Qin nation. Even after 10,000 years, their deeds could not be forgotten. Among them, the Saber Emperor was the oldest martial emperor. Before the Tianwu dynasty was destroyed, he had already established the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Furthermore, he was one of the most influential people in the Tianwu continent at that time. However, this was definitely not the former residence of the Saber Emperor. This was because it was clear that this portrait was made by a later generation. It was not a portrait of the Saber Emperor. Xiao collected his thoughts and looked around the room to see if there were any clues. He wanted to find out whose residence this was. There was a prayer mat in the middle of the room that attracted Xiao attention. Prayer mats were very common. They were the prayer mats that regular cultivators used to meditate. Of course, there were some prayer mats that were not ordinary. They were woven from cattails that possessed spirituality. There were even some small spirit-gathering formations carved on them. Cultivating on them could increase the rate at which one could absorb spiritual energy. Xiao had never used a prayer mat before, so he did not know much about it. The thing that attracted his attention was the pile of black ashes on the prayer mat. Chapter 202. Looking at the pile of ashes, Xiao had a guess in his heart. However, he was not sure. He stretched out his index finger and gently dipped it into the prayer mat. After he sniffed it, Xiao was finally sure of his earlier guess. This pile of ashes was caused by a cultivator entering a state of berserking qi deviation. He had spontaneously combusted and burned himself to death. This kind of thing was very common for cultivators of high cultivation. The higher one's cultivation, the higher the chance of entering a state of berserking qi deviation. The consequences would also be more severe. Although everyone knew of the danger involved, they could not stop. The further they went, the more insignificant they felt, the more they did not want to give up. Who? Xiao casually sent out a palm wind and swept away the ashes. A ring flickering with spiritual light appeared on the prayer mat. The words Hentian were written on the inside of the ring. Hentian, Qi Hentian. So, it is him. The doubts in Xiao heart cleared up. Qi Hentian was a pavilion master of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. He had outstanding talent. At a young age, he had already become a martial monarch. In terms of talent, he was one of the best in the entire history of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Rumor had it that after he passed down the position of pavilion master, he lived in seclusion. No one knew where he went. At that time, his cultivation had already reached the peak of martial sage. So, he came here to cultivate, Xiao muttered to himself. No wonder no one could find him. This place was very well hidden. He hung the portrait of the Saber Emperor on the wall. He probably wanted to use the Saber Emperor to motivate himself, hoping to reach the level of Emperor Wu. However, this had nothing to do with Xiao. What he was more concerned about was the spatial ring of a martial sage. There should be a lot of treasures in it. When Xiao sent his spiritual sense into the universe ring, he discovered 3 secret manuals and a spirit weapon. It was an inferior grade heaven-ranked saber. There was also a large pile of spirit stones behind it. When Xiao Chen looked carefully, he discovered they were all medial-grade spirit stones. Even though Xiao Chen had seen a large pile of spirit stones at the headquarters of the Mines of Heaven, it was still somewhat dazzling. Most of the spirit stones in the headquarters of the mines were inferior-grade spirit stones. Furthermore, they could only satisfy one's eyes. However, this ring was filled with medial-grade spirit stones. Most importantly, these were all ownerless items. They were now Xiao Chen's personal wealth. Suppressing his joy, Xiao Chen took out the 3 secret manuals and the long saber. He put the long saber aside and took out the first secret manual to read. Dragon and Tiger Body Sculpting Art. Xiao Chen slowly recited it. This was an earth-ranked mid-grade body strengthening technique. It was specially used to temper the body, refine the bones, strengthen the body, and strengthen one's qi, blood, and strength. Medial-grade earth-ranked martial techniques were already extremely rare. Even in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, it would be difficult to find a few. Under the situation where this heaven-ranked cultivation technique did not appear, it would be difficult to find a few. An earth-ranked cultivation technique was already the strongest. Furthermore, cultivation techniques were even rarer than martial techniques. After all, the continent did not lack martial techniques. No matter how one looked at it, this dragon and tiger body sculpting art was a treasure-grade secret manual. The dragon and tiger body sculpting art was split into 7 layers. The first layer strengthened the body, greatly increasing the qi and blood. The second layer, divine power, splitting mountains and rocks. The third layer, tiger roars deep in the forest, 100 beasts greet. The fourth layer, dragon roars throughout the world, piercing the heavens. The fifth layer, dragon tendon tiger bone, pulling mountains and rivers. When Xiao Chen saw the introduction, he rejoiced in his heart. He smiled and said, "This is great. This dragon and tiger body sculpting art is simply tailor-made for me." Furthermore, it came from a martial sage. This means that the direction I am taking in cultivating the physical body is not wrong. Although Xiao Chen's physical body was strong, he had not been able to make good use of it. He could only use brute force to attack in battle. He would not be able to gain an advantage against enemies who used essence. If one could use brute force to shatter mountains and rocks, others could do the same with essence. There was not much of a difference. However, with this dragon and tiger body sculpting art, the situation was different. His brute force would undergo a qualitative change. He would be able to use the advantages of his physical body more skillfully. In battle, he would be able to achieve an unexpected result, giving his opponent a lightning-quick strike. The most important thing was that Xiao Chen had obtained this dragon and tiger body sculpting art from a peak martial sage. Furthermore, it was one of the 3 secret manuals that he had brought with him when he was cultivating. This showed that this senior had comprehended the importance of the physical body in the final moments of his life. If he wanted to break through to Martial Emperor, he had to raise both the quality of his physical body and his cultivation. This proved that Xiao Chen's idea of cultivating the physical body was correct. The physical body and cultivation were both indispensable. Otherwise, he would only be able to advance to martial sage. Xiao Chen put away the dragon and tiger body sculpting art and took out the second secret manual to read. This was a fist technique called the Great Dragon Tiger Fist. Based on the name, it should be a set with the dragon and tiger body sculpting art. There was a total of 4 moves. First move, Fierce Tiger Leaving the Mountains. Second move, Crouching Tiger Hidden Dragon. Third move, Hissing Dragon Tiger Roar. Fourth move, Leaping Tiger Soaring Tiger. Note, this fist technique can only be practiced after the dragon and tiger body sculpting art is cultivated to the 3rd layer. Indeed, this was a set of martial techniques for the dragon and tiger body sculpting art. Xiao Chen smiled and closed his hands. Then, he flipped open the 3rd secret manual. The 3rd secret manual was rather strange. It was a sword technique called the Heart-Nourishing Universe Sword. It was also an earth-ranked martial technique. Xiaochen only took a quick glance at the sword technique and ignored it. He had not thought of cultivating a sword technique yet. After looking at the 3 secret manuals, Xiaochen said suspiciously, "Strange, as the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's pavilion master, why are the last 3 martial techniques he left behind not related to saber techniques?" Furthermore, the strangest thing was that Qi Hentian had started to cultivate his sword techniques. After thinking about it, Xiaochen felt that there was only one possibility. Qi Hentian was a genius in saber techniques. He had spent his entire life researching saber techniques. His research on saber techniques had already reached the peak. However, he was still unable to break through to martial sage. Perhaps, in the end, he felt that although he was talented, his comprehension of saber techniques could not improve further. He could only rely on other methods to make a breakthrough. Cultivating a sword technique was one of his attempts. When Xiaochen thought about it, he felt it was funny. Everyone in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion scoffed at sword techniques. If a person with a sword wanted to enter the Heavenly Saber Pavilion with a weaker cultivation, they would be killed before they could even enter Saber City. Since ancient times, the sword and the saber could not coexist. If they knew that there was once a genius pavilion master who focused on researching sword techniques, what expression would they have? Xiaochen suddenly thought, since he is learning the sword, he must have a sword. The sword that Qi Hentian used should not be ordinary. Since it is not in the universe ring, it must be somewhere else in this wooden hut. Xiaochen started to look around. After searching for a long time, he could not find anything. Just as Xiaochen was about to give up, he unexpectedly saw a sharpened tree branch. Holding the tree branch in his hand, Xiaochen could not help but laugh hoarsely. Of course, Qi Hentian's sword techniques had not reached the level where everything could be used as a sword. In the end, he still had some prejudice against sword techniques. The pride in his heart looked down on sword techniques. In the end, the tool that he used to learn sword techniques was just a sharpened tree branch. There was nothing special about the tree branch. Xiaochen casually tossed it aside and picked up the treasured saber. There were 2 flying dragons carved on the simple and unadorned scabbard. The saber hilt was long and had the words, "Roaming Dragon," carved on it. The handguard was like a dragon pearl with 2 flying dragons spitting it out. Grasping the saber hilt tightly, Xiaochen drew the roaming dragon saber with a schwa sound. The saber was 7 feet and 2 inches long. The streamlined blade flickered with a cold light. The instant the roaming dragon saber left its scabbard, it immediately connected with the qi whirlpool in Xiaochen's dantian. It was like an endless meridian, sending Xiaochen's essence into the saber in an endless stream. Schwa! A strand of saber qi automatically came out of the saber and chopped the painting of the saber emperor on the wall in half. The ability to automatically release saber qi was a very important ability of a heaven-ranked spirit weapon. It allowed cultivators who had not advanced to martial saint to release saber qi. If they advanced to martial saint, the saber qi would be even more solid. However, this essence exhausted a lot of it. Xiaochen had not held it for long. At this moment, he felt a small portion of his essence depleted. He quickly sheathed the roaming dragon saber. Xiaochen thought about his lunar shadow saber. It was originally a peak heaven-ranked spirit weapon. It was not without reason that Ao Jiao sealed it. Given Xiaochen's cultivation at that time, he would not have been able to even swing his saber once. The harvest in the tree hole was not small. After Xiaochen searched carefully again, he discovered that there was really nothing left. Just as Xiaochen was about to leave, his gaze suddenly fell on the round prayer mat. A prayer mat used by a bona fide peak martial sage to cultivate and meditate should not be something that those roadside stalls can compare to. I'll give it a try first. Otherwise, it would be too unfortunate if I miss out on this treasure, Xiaochen said as he walked towards the prayer mat. Just as Xiaochen sat down cross-legged, a horrifying force came from the bottom of the prayer mat and rebounded at him. The overwhelming force knocked Xiaochen heavily into the wooden wall. Bang! Xiaochen vomited a mouthful of blood and fell heavily to the ground. Before the force from the collision subsided, his body bounced a few times. Every time he bounced, he vomited a mouthful of blood. Chi! 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 Xiao Chen vomited a total of 9 mouthfuls of blood before he slowly stopped. When he saw the incredibly ordinary prayer mat on the ground, he revealed a horrified expression. Xiao Chen swallowed a blood-replenishing pill and executed the gravity spell. He immediately flew out and jumped off the tree. When he landed on the ground and rested for a long time, Xiao Chen's heart was still thumping heavily. The earlier experience was simply too horrifying. Although it was only for a short moment, Xiao Chen still felt a lingering fear. The instant Xiao Chen sat on the prayer mat, he felt like he could feel the pulse of the entire Lingyun mountain range. He saw a red ball of light jumping continuously under the ground, like a human heart. Spirit Vein's origin. These were the words that appeared in Xiao Chen's mind at that time. That prayer mat was indeed not simple. There were Tao markings carved on it, which attracted the horrifying energy of the Spirit Vein's origin. However, this was not something that Xiao Chen could use. With his current cultivation, he was not qualified to use the prayer mat before the energy of heaven and earth. Only a sage could use a prayer mat to cultivate and not be knocked back by that huge energy. After a night of silence, Xiao Chen slowly recovered from his internal injuries. His excellent physique allowed him to recover much faster than ordinary people. By the time the sun rose, most of his injuries were already healed. Xiao Chen took out the dragon and tiger body sculpting art and read it carefully. His original plan of searching for 200-year-old herbs had to be put aside for now. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.